like we're at 7 o'clock. I'd like to welcome everyone. Call the meeting to order for Tuesday, June 20th, 2017, the Council of the Borough of Duncannon. I'd like to welcome everyone to please rise for a moment of silence, followed by the Pledge of Allegiance. Mr. Liddick, would you please lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. You may be seated.
Happy with mine. You're happy with yours too, aren't you, Greg?
Perfectly happy. I'd like to welcome the Borough Secretary to provide the roll call for the officials present.
Mr. Crothermel?
Here.
Mr. Epley?
Present.
Mr. Adams?
Here.
Mr. Nace?
Here.
Mr. Williams?
Here.
Mr. Kirkhoff?
Here.
Ms. Young?
Here.
Mayor Capuana?
Here.
Solicitor Dissinger?
I am here.
Engineer Rogowski?
Present. Thank you. Just a reminder for everyone in the room, including us at the table, to please silence your phones or place them on vibrate so as not to disrupt the meeting this evening. Item number 5, the May 16th meeting minutes, the regular meeting from May 16th, 2017. Were there any corrections to the minutes as presented by the Secretary?
Mr. President, I have 2 corrections.
Mr. Epley.
On page 5, under utility, streets, and infrastructure, second sentence down says the committee is looking into a grant. I think that should be from 3M for signing. On further down, under revitalization and development, third paragraph down, a motion was made by Mr. Adams to survey residents, and I think that should be deeds, N-E-E-D-S, for elevation certificates. That's all I have.
Thank you, Mr. Epley. I had, and this may be a question for the solicitor, on page 3, I had asked specifically relative to the delivery of food and drinks for the crew working the night of the power outage, if that was believed by you to be any kind of conflict as far as gratuity or inappropriate.
Yes.
And you would indicate it was not. And I asked that very specifically to be included in the minutes, so that could be, whatever that was, to be included in the minutes. Are there any other corrections to the minutes presented? Any wish for action on the minutes?
Motion to accept the minutes.
We have a motion.
Second.
The motion by Mr. Williams, second by Mr. Crothermel to adopt the minutes as presented with 3 corrections mentioned. Any further discussion? All those in favor give your consent by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Move then to item number 6 on the agenda, public comment. Each speaker has 3 minutes to speak to present their concern or their comments, and we do ask that you state your name and your home address before speaking. First on the list, who I think we have on the agenda next, is Mr. Parrish, so we'll do that in addition to what's on the agenda. Okay. Mike Wolf.
I'm with Mr. Parrish.
Very good. Tana Berenstein wishes to speak at the end. Tana? Hi, Tana. Just remind me at the end in case we forget. Kevin Bismet.
Yes, Kevin Bisnet, 700 North High Street. Twofold here, passing some out, you can each grab one. Number 1, I had gotten a notice recently about a codes violation for having chickens in our backyard. We had been told by previous borough solicitors and borough managers that being zoned commercial general allowed us to use the exceptions in zoning, which under agricultural allows for the raising of livestock. The paperwork is being passed out now. We did start a petition online for the borough as a whole. First page is the wording of that petition. The next 4 pages are signatures. There are 3 pages of comments, none of which are in opposition of allowing borough residents to have chickens. The following 2 pages are a proposal I wrote up for you to consider for a type of ordinance based on the remainder of the packet, which are ordinances from other municipalities, both in Pennsylvania and around the state. that allow for the raising of chickens. Pittsburgh not only allows chickens, they allow goats. New York City allows chickens. Pretty much every major city west of the Mississippi River allows them. And we'd just like to know if council would consider making some changes to the zoning and codes regulations that would allow for the raising of chickens, obviously with certain requirements as far as containment and whatnot within the borough.
Is that everything?
Told you I'd keep it quick. That's
I-
why I made copies.
I don't think any one of us at this moment can speak for the group, but I know I was anticipating the conversation tonight, and there was some discussion last month at the meeting. So I think Mr. Adams' committee would like to take that on to review what you presented, as well as the other materials that have been presented, other safety ordinances and things. It's not, I don't think it's out of the question at this moment. I don't think we've had a vote on it, so, it could go any direction. The discussion last month, the result of the discussion last month was that the existing ordinance, which this table did not pass, does not allow for it. The interpretation as was presented by the manager and the codes enforcement officer, as well as the solicitor, was that it's not allowed as is. So until this is changed or not changed, we need to enforce what's on the books. I don't know what conversations you may have had before. I do recall a conversation you and I had when you said there was an exemption in your zoning. I didn't look it up. It wasn't an issue of.
If you take a look under zoning, we are commercial general, which allows for the use of any other district in the borough, the first of which is listed as agricultural, which is the raising of livestock. And that was how the previous managers and solicitor had interpreted that we then, along with a few other properties in the borough, were allowed due to the wording of that.
I don't know that answer.
Well, Mr. President, what I can tell you is that if they, and I can't speak for them, if that was their interpretation, it was because of an incomplete read of the zoning code. The zoning code, although it does allow the agricultural use and does have an agricultural zone, it does also specifically prohibit raising of livestock, which does include chickens. Also, it does violate, whether it's allowed by zoning or not, it does specifically violate the borough's code of ordinances, which is the violation. There were no zoning violation cited yet, but there was the codes violation that our codes enforcement officer issued.
So you're allowed to raise rabbits and pigeons?
We'll get to you in just a moment.
Yeah.
Kevin, do you have any, I see a lot of Duncannon, Pennsylvania on the petition.
Yes.
Do we have any way of knowing, Duncannon's a pretty big post office. Do we have any way of knowing
Yes.
who, because if they live in Wheatfield Township, that's not terribly relevant to the borough?
Understood. I can tell you that the majority of them are within the borough. I've gotten more phone calls than I can even keep track of at this point in time. There's even a few that are listed not being in the borough, like on the first page of the signatures, the fifth one down, Jen Keller, right behind me, lives in town. We don't know why some of them posted as not in Duncannon, but when you look at their comments, it then there shows that they are Duncannon.
Yeah, like Murr's on there, she's my neighbor.
I wish we had
Harrisburg.
addresses.
Yeah, well, unfortunately, it would not let me put that in there as a stipulation when I set this up online.
Understood. My only other question, this may be for my personal benefit more than the table, is I read a quote in the newspaper where, what I read, and correct me if I'm wrong, is that it doesn't kind of matter what our ordinance says, you're going to have them. Is
That wasn't how it was worded, it was twisted a little bit there.
I've experienced those situations before with the paper, so I wanted to clarify that with you, sir. Anything else, Mr. DeSnap?
That's all at this time, unless you have any more questions for me.
And with the table?
Have you had a chance to look at our ordinance at all?
I have read the ordinances
Okay, I just
both
wanna make
before the
sure.
codification and since that has occurred as well.
Okay.
Samantha DeSnap, you didn't indicate either way?
You did pretty good.
Pretty good. Kathy Smith, question mark.
Not at this point, thanks.
Dennis Chateau, yes.
Yes, I'm Dennis Chateau, I live 204 Church Street. I just wanted, I guess we're gonna address this a little bit later, but I had a sewage problem up there at my house, and I do wanna commend the borough. They were very fast with bringing somebody in to clog the main sewer line. I called up Drain Doctor, they came up, logged my line, we found out it wasn't my line, so I feel I incurred that cost, not due to my own issues.
You are under number 8.
Yes.
Roman numeral 8, number 2 on the agenda. So we have, everyone has your letter, so we'll be reviewing that and discussing that shortly.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, sir. Jennifer Keller didn't indicate either way.
I really didn't know what to say at the present time. This is actually the first time I've ever been to a meeting.
Welcome, thank you for being here.
I mean, we have our papers and stuff, you know what I mean, and I'm pretty much here because of the chicken thing, so.
I'm sorry, what?
I'm here for the chicken
In
thing.
support of?
Well, yeah.
Anything else?
We had gotten, I mean, we live at 518 North Market Street, so we had gotten a letter that stated about, not, that we weren't allowed to, I guess it was change something that appeared to be used as a chicken coop, and we weren't really changing it. What happened was when the code officer got a hold of me, he said that they weren't being, they weren't allowed to be running around and such, until everything was figured out. So at that point, we decided to take and just like make repairs to it, so we could put the ABM net over top. Like nothing's lagged into the ground, there's nothing concreted. You know what I mean? From a structural point, it is literally just pieces of wood holding itself up just so a net can be draped over top of it. You know what I mean? And attached so that they weren't out running all over the place until everything was figured out. So that's all. That was the only reason we even did that was because when the codes enforcer got a hold of me, he said about not having them run around. Which we had wanted to do prior, but it just, time got away from us with that.
Anything else?
Yeah.
The next name I can read Mutzabal, but I can't read the first name, so I'm guessing it's Floyd.
Floyd.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, she basically said what I was gonna say about, it wasn't enclosed, so it's not a permanent structure, and they told me to stop building, and it's already done. It's not a permanent structure. It's not laid to the ground, it's just something to put netting around, And I don't see any way the chickens are hurting anything. They're laying eggs, give the neighbors eggs, give mom and dad eggs, sister, whatever. But they're not hurting anything, you know what I mean? They got rid of the roosters, we got rid of the geese, the noisy stuff, and, but, yeah. It's, I understand it's Duncannon, but we are still in Perry County,
I'm not contesting that one tiny bit.
You know what I'm saying? Come on, guys, think about it,
Like I said, the situation as we stand right now today, the ordinances that we have in place that this table did not adopt, do not allow the chickens to be in the borough.
Well, I was gonna tell you one thing, New York City can have chickens, Duncannon can have chickens, come on.
And almost anything can
about
happen.
that.
Almost
You know what I
anything
mean?
can happen. But please understand, there is a process to amend or change or get rid of these code ordinance, or change the enforcement or give guidelines, so it's not an overnight process.
All it takes is a printer, man.
Well, not to change the ordinance.
If it was that easy.
We can end this discussion quick.
Would you have anything further?
Nah, I'm probably done talking to me.
Thank you, sir. Diane
Forensic.
Forensic, thank you. You said
I
maybe.
also live at 518 North Market Street.
She likes eggs.
I love eggs. Chickens they eat ticks, they eat fleas, they will even kill snakes. So it's like they're a good thing to have. We can even pet some of the chickens, it's like we got rid of the noisy ones, and if there are any more noisy ones, because there are a couple new ones that were born, they're gonna make really good chicken soup. The hens do a great job, it's like I don't, and they're great fun for the, teach the kids work ethic and all that, and I just, the property, we bought the property, and we understand that there were the people who lived there, they owned a cleaning business, so it was commercial. They also raised and sold rabbits, which, Sarah? Oh, what, I'm sorry.
Samantha.
I'm sorry, Samantha. First time I met her. they've even bought rabbits from them. So it's like,
Someone had chickens there before, because the
Yeah.
neighbor said so.
and someone had chickens there before because our next door neighbor said such. So it's like, they're actually a good thing. And I mean, I used to haul organic products the whole way across the country, and they're very expensive, so, we're getting organic stuff, in the backyard. So, I just think it's a good thing.
Like I said, we are, I think, more than willing to discuss it as a group. It's something that, it's the wish of the residents, or the wish of the majority of the residents. I think we can try to make something happen, but I think we need to go through the proper process.
Okay,
Mr. Adams' committee is going to take it on. The committee meetings are advertised, so I would encourage any and all of you to attend the meetings and have more of an informal discussion regarding that, and we can go from there.
well, now that I'm retired, I can actually attend stuff.
Since I'm going to be taking the lead on this, I just want to be clear, I don't think anybody's against this. I don't want you guys to approach it that way. It's just that we have basically a law on the book that says they can't be here. And in order to change that, there's just a process, So I don't want you guys to think that it's like everyone's against the change.
And it's a
So we
process
wouldn't
that's,
start that
that's a little bit intensive, so we really only want to go through it once.
Right.
Well, we appreciate whatever you can do to help us.
And thank you for being here to bring it forward. The attendance at the meetings is critical, and for a lot of years, we haven't had much attendance at the meetings. So having feedback from those who are here to serve is important. Does anyone else wish to speak who did not sign it? Pass these down to the secretary, please. Move on to then number 7. Move on then to number 7. Watershed conservation presentation by Mr. Parrish about character management services.
Well, I'm not here to talk about chickens. I think we have a common bond with that. I'm here to talk about the woods. A lot of ticks in the woods, by the way. If you've been in the woods, be careful. Just like to say thank you to Borough Council for having me here tonight to talk about the Nature Conservancy and watershed conservation. I also have Mike Wolf here with me today from Appalachian Forest Consultants, who went out and did a rapid assessment and is going to report back. I actually have a little bit of video here to show on the watershed, and I have some great things to report back since we last talked and you passed the resolution to support partnership with the Nature Conservancy on the watershed. So let's have a few things to hand out here. Got want help? Yeah, sure. Hand that one out, start here. There's the copy over there. Let's go, Roger.
Not well.
By the time I get these handed out, that'll conclude the presentation. Just kidding. Let's go ahead. Pull the headlights out further. Here we go. Okay. Well, apologize for the three here on this end for the turned neck, but I just want to again thank everybody for taking their time to listen to a presentation tonight from the Nature Conservancy to talk about the watershed and talk about the Nature Conservancy's proposal to permanently protect the watershed through a conservation easement and the development of a sustainable forest management plan, and then also partnering with the borough to basically pay for engineering and redesign of parking areas and anything else that you need for your water production and security around the wells and other things if we're going to do a project together. So I want to start and say thank you for having me here. Since we last met, there was a couple things the resolution wanted to cover. First was wanted the Nature Conservancy to commission an appraisal and then submit a grant to the DCNR for essentially the purchase of a conservation easement. All that means is basically the easement retires the development rights on the property, but the borough continues to own and manage the timber and the forest and the access and the water on the property. So since that time, I've submitted a grant. We had dozens of letters of support. The local townships, Marysville, Rye, Penn, Wheatfield, all those are in support. Local representatives, lots of local businesses in support of making the watershed property and partnering with the Nature Conservancy to basically make it more visible and accessible for people, and also the long-term production of timber products to continue to help sustain the borough's finances over time. So with that being said, we submitted a grant, and I'm happy to say that it's in consideration right now with DCNR, and we're looking to do a tour on the property of DCNR in August. One of the other components of our project would be to develop a sustainable forest management plan for the property. And to do that, I actually wanted to have someone here, and that's Mike Wolf today, come in, look at the property, and give you a little perspective. And Mike can give you his qualifications, what he manages. And Mike actually manages other properties with FSC certified conservation easements. So I brought somebody here today who's not only a forester, but a forester who manages what we're proposing. So so I'm not just here and you're hearing it from me, you're hearing it from a third-party independent professional that puts food on the table for his family through working with organizations like the Nature Conservancies and landowners like yourself. And I will say he's the forester for Capital Region Water. So they have 8,300 acres, the DeHart property, and that's enrolled in our Working Woodlands program. So he's developed a forest management plan for there, and he can actually let you know how many harvests and what there's a lot of activities that are going to be going on at Capital Region Water.
It'll all be starting here this year.
So with that being said, I'll pass it over to Mike, and I can just control it.
Mike Wolf, I'm 23 years or so as a professional forester, and the last 10 or so as an independent private consultant. I'm a partner in Appalachian Forest Consultants out of Stoystown, Somerset County. And I think lately, I've been working with the Nature Conservancy on at least 2 large projects, the Capital Region and also the Lock Haven City Authority property, and a bunch of other smaller ones that they asked me for advice on. So I think I'm now known as the forester who's not afraid of complex situations, and I think that's why they keep bringing me in. But your property's great. Josh showed it to me about 2 weeks ago. I love the area here. It was actually my first time to Duncannon with Josh, and then this is my second time. So of course I had to get a hamburger down at the Doyle Hotel about 2 hours ago to feel the vibe of the town. Love the place, and I think the main focus of what I want to do is to make sure that I'm not coming in as in opposition to anyone or to any of the decisions that have been made in the past or any forest management strategies that have been implemented in the past. I don't want to come in opposition. I just want to come in and say, this is what I saw, and in gathering kind of from the Nature Conservancy what they see as your desire or your goals, your objectives for the property, and this new cooperation that you're working on with the Nature Conservancy. I just want to come in and say, this is what you have, and here are some things you want to think about in moving forward to get to where you really want to go. So let's go ahead. And that being said, any forest management plan, no matter how long it takes to develop, there's always gonna be some holes to fill. And of course, thankfully, I've never seen such a wavy
I know,
presentation board here. So it's really gonna bring some level of complexity over here, but for you all have the hard copy, thankfully. But really, there's always room for improvement, and that's really where I just wanna say, no matter who wrote the plan, whether I wrote the plan, whether I've been working for you, I'm not coming in opposition, I'm just saying, let's continuously improve, or else we're gonna get worse. If we stop improving, we're getting worse.
Nice egg reference.
Pardon?
Nice egg reference.
Thank you.
Yeah. Who's anticipating that?
You can see, just from the aerial that the Nature Conservancy provided me and some of the harvest blocks that have been harvested already, we're looking at actually a very small amount of the property that has not been part of a harvest block since about 2007. So there's been, I would call it intensive harvesting occurring on the property already. If you look at the stats page, total property size over 2,000 acres. Total, the one you really need to be looking at is that number of operable acres on the property is a little over 1,000 acres. And if you want to look at the total acres not harvested, you're looking at like 1,300, 1,400 acres. So it's kind of a small amount in the operable category that has not been harvested to this point. Go ahead, Josh.
And the main barrier is just slopes above 40%. I mean, it's.
Yeah. So of the 1,000 acres that are operable or harvestable, we're looking at already 625 or so have been harvested, and that leaves us with a little less than 400 acres remaining for some sort of potential future harvest. And really, if you start running these numbers, you can quickly see that you only have about 20% of the property that still has a mature overstory, and that 20% is the only part of the property that's not what I would consider early successional habitat, or ground level, a lot of brush and a lot of new growth coming in. So about 20% of the property doesn't have that. So the very typical scene is what you're looking at there on that next page and the following page. Go ahead, one more. So there's 3 pictures there that basically show the average or the general or the typical scene of what's out there.
And what, like a forest like that age, I mean, what type of timeline are you looking at?
Oh, I mean, it's been harvested.
Yeah.
And really the process that was followed during the harvest was an attempt at a regeneration cut. So the purpose of that harvest was to let enough light in to restart the forest. It's called even-aged forest management. So we're looking at, after the cut, you're looking at probably 50, 60 years until a thinning process started. And beyond that, another, in total, probably 90 to 110 years before, a major harvest would occur. Beyond that first cut. Go ahead. So there's quite a bit of hurdles that I'm noticing on the property in basically the 80% of the property that's been cut the way it's been cut. And those hurdles are a lot of competing plants. There are competing plants down low in the understory. There are competing plants between that understory and the taller trees. It's called the mid-story. And there are natives and there are exotics. The natives are striped maple, hay-scented fern, witch hazel, and beech brush. And the exotics are multiflora rose, mile-a-minute vine, Japanese stiltgrass, Japanese barberry, and tree of heaven. And there's probably others. That's kind of the short list on both sides. And remember, I mentioned multiple layers of undesirable plants. You can see on this picture here, that's Josh standing leaning on a little birch tree that becomes a pretty tall mid-story mid-story competitor. And underneath Josh there is hay-scented fern and various other undesirable plants. And then, of course, the usual hurdle is the deer herd. The deer really like to eat certain kinds of plants, and they don't like to eat other kinds of plants. And the ones that they like to eat are the ones that we would really prefer to be growing. The red oak, the white oak, the hickory, the maples, the cherry. They'll eat those before any of those other plants that I just mentioned a minute ago.
Oh, yeah.
It's another picture of deer browsing going on, very substantial deer browsing, actually. So if you look at a forest trying to regrow, which is 80% of your forest trying to regrow, you could have even a fairly small deer herd can have an impact on the future of that forest. It may not completely reduce the regeneration, but it's going to pick certain species that it wants to eat and slow the growth of, and sometimes even kill, and it's going to ignore certain species that are going to be able to grow because of that selective browsing. So we have these challenges to overcome. This picture is really worth 1,000 words. In the left side of this picture, this section over here, we could find oak, hickory, maple, and sassafras, and some other competing or undesirable plants intermixed with it. But on the right side of this picture, where all that mid-story shade, basically it's uncut birch. It's very small diameter, but very tall black birch. So we have no mid-story shade on the left of the picture and complete mid-story shade on the right of the picture. We're actually growing some nice desirable plants as a result of the timber harvest on the left side, whereas on the right side, that shade layer of those intermediate birch, those mid-story birch that were not looked into with the last cut, not taken down in the last cut, not treated with an herbicide in the last cut, and they've really produced a dense shade. So across your whole property, go ahead to the next. Across your whole property, we really run into a situation where this is actually inside of a harvest block, which most of your harvest blocks look like, wow, it's been really opened up. But when you get in and you look straight up, you don't see much blue sky. You see a lot of leaf coverage. Even though they're not big trees, there's a bunch of small diameter black birch that have been left from the previous cut that are producing shade. In this particular location, we had more than 70% shade still there. On average, you're looking at easily over 50% shade in your cuts. Remember, those cuts were designed to start a new forest growing. So the new forest is trying to start growing. It's trying to get over those hurdles that we mentioned, but it's not going to if the black birch, at least, and some other things are not really tended to and pretty quickly. So what's at stake? Quite honestly, if you did nothing, you're going to end up losing all of the desirable plants that are trying to regrow as a result of those harvests.
What's a desirable shade level?
Less than 50%, much less than 50%. Yeah. And I say you're over 50% everywhere because that's an easy. That was an easy fact for me to back up. But you're well over 50% all over the place.
The other piece about the black birch is on this site too, you can see it. It doesn't grow like the quality red oak and other things. This site wants to grow poplar, red oak, white oak. All the trees you guys have been used to selling over the years. If you turn into every other tree on the whole property is black birch, and if you fast forward that 100 years, you're not going to be looking at. The future residents here are not going to be looking at the same, essentially, asset.
Yeah. There's no timber value, no wildlife value. Everything goes downhill when it reverts to birch.
Yeah, it's less diverse.
Yeah. Just
like your retirement, you wouldn't want it all. If your retirement was all black birch, look out.
Some areas of the property have very little growing in the understory, not much, but some. And this is actually in a cut. You can see the stumps, but there's so much birch that really nothing will grow on the forest floor, and the only thing that will come in over time are the invasive plants that can really grow anywhere. They can grow in the middle of this room probably and still survive. So I feel as a professional trying to provide advice to you as a landowner that you should really start to focus on the mid-story and the understory of your current forest. Okay? And I can't read that or anything, but I feel you should make an effort to begin to choose what you want to grow and to make decisions on what's going to be there for the next generation or generations to come. You're at a point right now where you can still have an effect with some good decisions. You can still have an effect on what's going to be growing there in 20 years. And I'm very certain that if certain decisions aren't made and certain things don't happen in the mid-story and the understory, you're going to lose that opportunity very quickly. Can't read it, go ahead.
Yeah.
So my advice, 3 basic points. Follow through on completing a forest management plan as the Nature Conservancy has advised. Cooperate with both state and federal agencies to attempt to secure funding. There's federal funding available to private landowners that can help them with competing plants, with cut down operations on black birch, herbicide control on invasives, those kind of things. And then my other third point, and probably really one of the most important points, is maintain what overstory you do have left. I would
About
just
200 acres or 250.
yeah,
acres
it's
of
like
mature
300
acres.
acres,
Yeah.
400 acres of kind of uncut. I would just, hey, that's our uncut area. Until you have a real good handle on what's going to come back after a harvest, which really at this point you don't. You're not in control of that. I think you can still make some decisions, as I said, to affect it, but you're not in control of it. Until you're able to control that, just leave the rest of the overstory alone. That's it.
That's great. Thanks, Mike. Thanks.
Any questions? Any questions?
Well, so thanks, Mike. And that being said, the way I kind of think about the next, with Mike's last recommendation is really, if you have a garden, your plan, your concentration for probably the next 10 years is gardening, is tending, it's trying to manipulate what's coming back. It's not never cutting that 300 or 400 acres. It's figuring out getting the mid-story and understory under control, and then creating a plan after that to basically, eventually your forests all have finite terms. You're going to have to create a plan to turn that forest over to and bring it back. So it's not, when Mike's saying, kind of leave it, let grow, it's not let grow forever. It's let grow until you have a plan, you're getting a handle on the property, and you're comfortable kind of where the future forest is going to go. So with all that being said, the last thing I handed out was the Nature Conservancy, just to kind of put together what came out of what the resolution wanted the Nature Conservancy to do. That was put in a grant. So we put in a grant that would compensate the borough $550,000 for the conservation easement. That would come to the borough once the grant's awarded. We'll know about that this fall. The second piece we put together was in the borough. I know had planned a timber harvest coming up soon. Obviously, our recommendation is, it's not saying let it go forever, but is obviously in conflict with that. So I talked to our leadership at the Nature Conservancy, and we wanted to offer a $100,000 option payment to basically, if the borough signed an option to basically give the right to Nature Conservancy to purchase a conservation easement under these terms, we would pay the borough $100,000 at signing for that option, which would be non-refundable. Beauty of that is, you get $100,000 for an option, and you still own the trees to manage them in the future. That's not taking the value away off the table. So I wanted to bring that up, that we want to, we're very committed to this project, and that's why we're willing to, put that forward and at risk if we can't raise the funds. And then the third piece I wanted to mention was we are actively already starting to fundraise. I'm an optimistic person. I'm already starting to fundraise for things like the forest management plan will probably be about $40,000, $40,000. So we're going to pay, Nature Conservancy will be paying all these costs. This would be zero funds from the borough. And the last thing was, we want to, obviously talk to facilities and talk to everyone here about what are the other needs. If we do this, there's other implications. If there's a trail, and if, so there's going to be more people pulling in. So what's that mean for parking? Maybe we should have an engine, a firm design. The Nature Conservancy would be willing to have a firm design a parking area and then build it. Which I'd have to do more fundraising, but again, I'm committed to this, I'm from the area. I honestly think the property and the whole area we live in here it's the best place in the world. So I just wanted to bring that up too, that we're willing to work with you basically on all of your needs to make this happen, and I'm willing to work nights, weekends, and whatever to get the funds to do this. I didn't expect or anticipate any action or anything tonight. I just wanted questions, reactions, and the next step would be actually to draft an option agreement with a reference to a conservation easement that would be, it wouldn't be final, but it would be substantively what would be agreed upon. We just actually did that very same thing with Capital Region Water. So I went through that whole process with their counsel. They actually hired outside counsel. So that, again, I think we could draw on some of the base documents to start with from Capital Region Water. We wouldn't have to start from scratch, but there are some differences. So with that being said, Craig.
As part of the DCNR grant, do they have requirements as far as activities that would be required to be allowed on the property or that would not be allowed on the property?
So it's passive public access.
Okay.
So don't have to open gates. Those are the types of things Mike Criley, talking to him, he's like, you don't want, people driving back into the property. That would just be a disaster. Obviously, it's great to have access if there's an emergency, those types of things. But yeah, so it's passive public access. And the thing that we would do in the forest management plan is we would actually really tighten it up, because you don't want trails, kind of prescriptive passive public access that's what we've done in the past with other landowners.
Part of the reason I ask is a few years ago, and I don't know if you're aware of this or not, but I'm glad Kevin's here tonight. There was some presentation and some push. Roger was, I think, on the receiving end of some of it, regarding ATV access and some more recreation access on the property. And the major pushback was from two sources at that time, and it was from members of this council about the impact of ATVs on the property.
Oh, yeah.
And from the engineering folks, or maybe not the engineering folks as much, but just, we can't do anything because DEP won't let us do anything because there's a watershed out there.
Sure. Source water protection, yeah.
So is that would not be an option, or that would be an option?
No, that would be your discretion. That would not, the grant would not dictate any of that.
But DCNR being involved could potentially...
Would give you further protection against, yes.
Okay.
Yep.
Greg, without trying to put you on the spot too much, I think we touched on this briefly before, that there's certain diameter or certain radius.
Yeah, and I think the reality is that the size of the watershed is far in excess of what you need. So it would be a targeted type of scenario where perhaps it could be allowed in certain areas, but at the same time, there'd be other areas that we would look at it from a practical perspective. You're not going to just warden off push them all to the back, because then they're of course going to drive through the front to get to the back. So you would have to look at that.
And I'm not saying that's what we necessarily want to do, but it was really shot down very quickly, I think, a couple years ago, that that's not an option for this reason, this reason, this reason. And the other response was from our forester, was very concerned that it would have a negative impact.
It has
on
a
the forest.
negative impact on trails, on disturbance of, another thing is it's a vector to bring in lots of new invasives. So thousands of tires that were in mud other places come into your property and run around. It's really, I would never recommend it, and we can actually, the conservation easement as well would have environmental protections in there, and that would be another thing to look at from an overall conservation perspective. That it's a really it's a tough thing to manage. I'll say that. I don't want to say it's impossible, but it's very tough.
Thank you.
Yep.
I had a question, if I may.
Absolutely.
Concerned about the management costs, your cutting of the birch and the herbicide application. That all sounds expensive to me. Who pays for it? What's required? You know,
So-
are we gonna be paying?
There's nothing in our plan
this-
that is prescriptive. I mean, the Sustainable Forest Management Plan is a bunch of activities that we want you to promote and carry out. The cost of some of those things are expensive. The good thing about your property is you're already enrolled in the Game Commission's public access program. I checked with Ben Jones actually before coming here, then I talked with Mike Riley. Because you're in that program, you qualify to access Pittman-Robertson federal funds. Basically, I just got my license yesterday, it went on sale. Basically, there's a portion of ammunition and license sales and other things that goes to this Pittman-Robertson federal fund. It's bought most of the game lands and hunting lands all over the U.S. Part of that is allocated to habitat management. So the beauty of your property here is it's a prime property for that type of management, so birch control, invasive control. So the first thing we would do once we get the forest management plan developed would be, with you guys, walk over to the Game Commission and Mike's actually can talk, you do a lot of work with Beat Hip and then with Pittman Robertson.
Yep.
How many acres have you,
Just with the Game Commission?
Thousands of acres. So and that's all they pay for it, right?
Yeah.
So it's
Controlled burning.
$0
Yeah.
to the borough, which is, I'm
Prescriptive
hoping, the
fire.
right number.
Herbicide.
Yeah,
All that stuff.
yeah. I know sometimes it sounds like it's too good to be true, but really, honestly, it's a great partnership. And we're working now. I direct this program across North America for the Nature Conservancy, so we're working all over Pennsylvania with about 40,000 other acres of watersheds. Then we're doing our first. We're going to be doing our first watershed in New York, which will be the state capital. So signed up last week. Albany has 8,000 acres, and then working all over the rest of the U.S. So this is just, for me, this is home. So I'm just.
Mike, in your experience working with the Game Commission through I heard federal program and the funds therefrom, have you generally gotten the money from the Game Commission to cover these costs, or has it been a matching, like a 50-50 split, or has it generally been 100%? What's been your...
With the Game Commission, they want to come in and handle everything, so they cover all the cost, but then they manage the project themselves, typically. So they would, if it was bid requirements or something like that, which they're required also, not just your board, but they're required as well. They'll come in and they'll put the bid package together and solicit the bids and work with the winning bidder.
So
on
then all the costs
project.
of burning, cutting down trees, herbicide,
Yep.
all of that
Yep.
would
Now,
likely
I
not
mentioned
balance.
federal, that's on the state side, that's the Game Commission, but I mentioned federal funds as well, because there's federal programs through the Natural Resource Conservation Service, which is a section of the Department of Ag, the federal Department of Ag, that provide funding for creating certain kinds of habitat for typically small birds that are potentials for the endangered species list, something like that. Cerulean warbler, golden wing warbler. You have, in my opinion anyway, you have a very strong potential to enter into some of those projects as well.
Is there any similar process or program through the Fish and Boat Commission? The reason I ask, in Sherman's Creek, the edge of the property, is I forget what the levels are, but a trout stream.
They do have, I think they do have, I've not worked on any of those.
Access.
They do have projects available, but none that would sort of overlap with your forest needs.
Right, that would be more of the aquatic side.
In the water.
Right. Habitat, structures, that kind of thing.
But we definitely would want to reach out to them.
Because ultimately, the water flowed from the top of the hill.
Right,
So it's flowing
yeah,
through this property.
absolutely, yeah.
Just
Those are all the questions I have.
to backtrack a minute, is there anything either in the grant or in the easement itself which binds the borough to perform the management, independent of funding?
So the thing that it binds you to is if you make an action on the property. So if you're going to do forestry and cut, if you're going to go do a big harvest, that you need to take the steps necessary to the most extent you can that's sustainable, that you're getting back a diverse group. But the scenario you're saying is, let's say you just want to let the property grow for a while. Do we have to do anything? Are we do we have to? And the answer is no. it's, you can have enforcement, and we have there's a lot of landowners out there who are very passive. That just, let the property grow, but I think, given your case and given the resources that are out there, you could pull in. I mean, I would suggest that, if you can have a free lunch, with the game commission and.
I understand that, but.
Yeah, but it's a good question.
Financial concerns
Yes.
are a significant
Yes.
issue to this
Yes.
borough.
Absolutely.
Okay, we don't want to
Yes.
sign on and commit ourselves
Right.
to, as you said, an expensive,
Yes.
program. Okay,
Yep.
now, the option, how long?
3 years.
3 years,
Mhm. 100,000 non-refundable.
up front.
Yep,
Okay.
yep. It's a lot of fundraising, and hopefully I can knock it out of the park, but I can't guarantee it. So.
Would we be allowed to have well expansion if we need to drill another well?
So that's going to be right in the easement, and I think that was in the term sheet I gave you, that any facilities or footprint you need to provide, water to the residents of the borough, that's a reserved right, that you're not saying we've got 3 wells and that's forever. So yes. And that's consistent with all of our other water providers.
Timeline, next steps, where do we go from here?
I could get working on an option agreement and other things tomorrow when I get back in the office, and have something, draft to review in probably a couple weeks. It's going to take a little bit of time to get our legal staff have to look at it, but then I could shoot it your way to look at, mark up, think about. Yeah.
Jonas, could you have, a very rough draft, maybe for, I know you presented before to the Finance Committee, and I don't know, Mr. President, what committee you'd want to assign that to, but something that they could start looking at themselves too and review with our solicitor, because you're not going to dictate terms, you're going to say these are
No,
suggested and
right.
negotiate it.
Yeah, I mean, I'll get working on this if it seems positive here tonight. I mean, I wasn't obviously expecting any vote or anything, but if you're feeling like we should take the next steps, I mean, I'll make it a high priority and get working on it right away. And then we can just coordinate on when that, if you want me to go to the Finance Committee meeting.
I'm just thinking in terms of, then you have something to look at and determine, and if there's conditions that we don't like, we.
Right. Yep.
The 100,000 is funded. It's not, the 100,000 payment, that's funded. You don't have to fundraise for that. That's not,
Right.
okay.
Well, I might, yeah, well, if I can't raise the rest of the funds, then yeah, I'm gonna be in a pickle, but it's there. We can write the check for the 100,000.
Okay, that's what I wanted to know.
Yes, yep.
Are there any questions from the table?
We have heard from our forester, and with all due respect to you, what he says is very, very different. And I think you were here for part of that, Mr. Parrish. Is there any interest from the table in getting a third independent forester to take a look at that? Because, what we're hearing from our forester is that what we're doing is completely sustainable. We can continue doing cuts as we do for
Every other year.
yeah, for, perpetuity, as far as what I understood from it. And what he's telling us is very different, that if we continue with the next cut, we may very well be faced with, a forest that won't regenerate well. So I think that's kind of a big hinge to make a decision on. We have two professionals that are telling us very different things. And each, has their own function in what they're doing. So is there any way we could get an independent opinion that somebody who's only working for us and doesn't stand to make any money off the cut?
I have no dog in the hunt.
No,
I know, yeah, he's not gonna be doing any cuts for you, yeah. But, yeah, if you guys want to, I would say absolutely, look up a consulting forester and kind of give them what your plans, what your activities were and what your plans are in the future, and, 200,000-300,000 board feet every 2 years, and, yeah.
I'm very torn on this after listening to the two different presentations, because if what our forester is telling us is true, we would be absolutely irresponsible to pull the plug on what's a sustainable cut program. If what he's telling us is true, I think it would be absolutely irresponsible to move forward with it. So I think we need a third opinion.
And the other piece with what I'm proposing is, it's not taking, in the long term, any of that timber off the table, none of it. And, you know, if you look at what, you know, $650,000 to, you know, basically say you're not gonna develop the property, it's gonna stay watershed, stay in forest. That's, I'm assuming, a couple years of timber harvest. You know, so buying out some time as well.
Should be about 12 years, basically.
12 years.
The average of
Yeah, that's why that's where I came up with $100,000. I actually looked at your last one, it was like $107,000 or something net to you. So yeah, that's another way to look at it. Your timber's getting bigger, and anyways, yeah, it's completely up to you, and yeah, it's your property.
Is there any wish for action this evening? Okay. Any more questions for Josh? Are there any questions from the audience for Josh? This is your property as much as it is ours. Okay. Thank you. Yep. And thank you for being here tonight. If you have contact information that you haven't already left, if anyone wants to talk offline, they could reach out.
Yeah, Josh does everything for me, and I'm available at any time.
Great. Thank you. Thank you, gentlemen, both. Thanks. Move on to item number 8 then, appointments, resignations, correspondence, proposals, and citizen action forms. We invited the guy that was out of here on May 31st to come back for a day, and I'd like to welcome Paul Liddick to come up front. Actually, hold on 1 second, Paul. Stay right there. Anyone that doesn't know Paul probably hasn't been here very long or paid much attention, because Paul's worked for the borough for how many years?
29 and a half.
29 and a half.
Count the end of the year, 30 and a half.
30. He submitted his request intention to retire back in April to the Personnel Committee, and we accepted his retirement request at the, I believe, the April meeting. And then last month we talked about, you know, we have had a lot of turnover in staff here in the borough over a number of years, and not many of those have been from retirement. And I really want to point that out and recognize that we appreciate everything that Paul's done for the borough for a number of years and has kind of been a staple of this community. Therefore, we as council talked last month about preparing a resolution, and I'm going to read the resolution now, and hopefully we'll have a vote and then maybe a presentation. Resolution number 2017-5, a resolution of the Borough of the Borough Council of the Borough of Duncannon, Perry County, Pennsylvania, honoring Paul Liddick upon his retirement May 31st, 2017. Whereas Paul Liddick Sr., who was born and raised in Duncannon, has devoted most of his adult life to service to the Duncannon Borough and its residents. And whereas Paul, on May 31st, 2017, retired following more than 30 years of employment with the borough. And whereas Paul has been an invaluable employee not only with the Public Works Department, but also as that department's liaison to the business office and as the borough's procurement officer. And whereas Paul continues to serve the borough of Duncannon and its residents in his capacity as the borough's emergency management coordinator. And whereas Paul also is of service to the borough and its residents as a volunteer with the Duncannon Fire Company and as an active member of the Duncannon American Legion Post 340. And now therefore be it resolved by the Borough of Duncannon that the Borough Council joins Mayor John Capuana in proclaiming Wednesday, June 21st, 2017 as Paul Liddick Day in the Borough of Duncannon. Resolved and adopted this 20th day of June 2017. I will tell everyone I did already sign this because I assumed it was going to be a no-brainer, but I probably should not have because it hasn't been adopted by council. That being said, I will make the motion to adopt the resolution as presented.
Second.
Okay. We have a motion with a second to adopt resolution number 2017-5. Is there any further discussion? All those in favor give your consent by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, I signed it rightfully. You can pass it down to Kathy for a signature. Now you can come up, Paul.
Now you can come up. We're going to put you on camera. Oh, I wanted to do this at like 10 o'clock so I could read you a bedtime story.
Hey,
Yeah,
but I still get up at 5 o'clock in the morning.
that's why I wanted to do it at 10 o'clock before you went to bed. So, in honor of his recent retirement from employment with the Borough of Duncannon, and in recognition of his more than 30 years of service to the Borough of Duncannon, I, John Capuana, being duly sworn as Mayor of Duncannon, do hereby proclaim that Wednesday, June 21st, 2017, shall be known as Paulitic Day in the Borough of Duncannon, and urge all citizens and employees to join Borough Council and I in congratulating Paul Liddick Sr. on an outstanding career with the Borough of Duncannon and wishing him many continued years of happiness and good health. Proclaimed this 20th day of June 2017. Congratulations, sir.
Yep. Oh, yeah, I'm ready.
And now you get to say a few words.
3 minutes or less.
Breakfast?
Yep.
We'll have breakfast. You bet, Frank.
That's all.
Thanks, Bob.
You don't want to see
Congratulations, Mr.
Does she have a ring on? Did he kiss the ring?
I had to come every
You know where I live,
my
don't you?
hand.
Don't forget Tony, Tony's back there. Don't forget Tony, he gets a,
Oh, hell, Tony. I'd rather hold his wife.
That's what we expected.
He ain't home now, I can go down. It has been a pleasure working for the borough for, like I said, about 30 years. I started here back in the early 70s, and I stayed here a year and left for a better job. And I come back in 1987 when I come back from Texas. I've been here ever since. I said I wasn't going to leave. I promised Tom Evans, the borough manager, when he hired me back. Most of y'all know Tom. Tom said, if I hire you back, you ain't going to leave me this time, are you? After another time, I said I'll stay as long as you're around. Well, Tom's been here and gone and passed, and I was still here. But I turned 65, and I'm diabetic now, and I figured it's time for me to get out. So, I taught a lot of guys, taught a lot of the girls in the office stuff that they never knew, especially when everybody bailed out on us. Kathy, Chris came aboard, and I treated him a few things. And they know, if they need me, they all have my number. They can call me for help, and I'll help them wherever I can. Thank you again.
Thank you, Paul.
Thank you.
Like I said, we haven't had, I've been in this building, in this room for meetings since 2004, and we haven't had many retirements, and certainly not many that were pleasant, so we congratulate Paul. Thank you. Yep. Item number 2, under item 8 on the agenda, Dennis Chateau. You should have a letter from Mr. Chateau dated, maybe not dated, of 204 High Street, including, 204 Church Street, including a bill from Drain Doctors for a sewer cleaning that was found to have, the clog was in the borough sewer line. He's requesting, the gist of it, correct me if I'm wrong, is he's requesting reimbursement of that cost of $222.50, since the clog was in fact in the borough sewer line. Chris, you can verify that?
yes. I can verify that we had a problem in our line that we dealt with after being notified by Mr. Shadow.
Yeah, it says on the bill as well.
Yes.
I make a motion to reimburse Dennis Chateau the $222.50 for the drain doctor bill.
I'll second. That was me.
Is it appropriate to reimburse that out of sewer?
I think it's gonna be water.
Yes.
Is that where you want to come from, Christie?
Yes.
Jeff, your second, is okay? We have motion by Ms. Young and second by Mr. Kirkhoff to reimburse the amount of $222.50 to Mr. Shadow for his drain doctor's bill. knowing that the clog or the issue is in the borough's sewage line. Any further discussion? All those in favor, give your consent by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. We'll be in touch. Check with you in a minute.
Checks in the mail.
We are still looking for a resident to serve on our borough municipal authority, or borough sewer authority, following Mr. Finnan's resignation 4 or 5 months ago now. If anyone has any interest or knows anyone who has any interest, we'll welcome your interest. Are there any other items under appointments, resignations, correspondence, proposals, and citizen action forms? Move on to item number 9, general reports, the borough engineer, Mr. Rogowski.
Mr. President, a couple of action items this evening. You have my written report, and perhaps we can go through the written report as it relates to the action items. But essentially, we are in a position to have the consent order executed by DEP. It was approved by the authority, approved by the borough, went back to DEP, everything's been squared away. We just need kind of a final thumbs up from the borough to be able to cut the check, which was $2,000, and also then forward that to DEP for finalization. So that is action item number 3 under my report, so maybe we take that first if you so desire. Or sorry, action item number 3.
I'll move that we authorize payment of $3,000 for our COA with the Department of Environmental Protection, our fine for the sewer plant issues.
Second.
I've made the motion, second by Mr. Kirkhoff, to allocate $3,000 for payment of our fine to DEP. Any further discussion? All those in favor, give your consent by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Next.
Related to the consent order, as council may be aware, we had a pilot of the screw press, the proposed piece of equipment that was going to replace the belt press last week. The pilot went fairly well. It did, of course, identify other issues related to the plant itself that we need to address, although I think we all had in the back of our mind that those issues would need to be addressed, and those are related to some of the reclaimed water that comes out of the plant and both feeds into the equipment. So that most certainly will be a part of this first phase of the wastewater treatment plant project, where we will remove some of the existing recirculation pumps from the wastewater and replace those with VFD drives. We've talked about this for a couple of years now. I mean, it's time to do it. So that'll be part of phase 1 as we move down that road. We will be incurring some deadlines. Kind of the good thing with the consent order kind of just working its way along is that our deadlines work their way along consistently. So, next year we'll need to actually take care of some things and get the replacement complete once that consent order is signed. So we're moving forward. We're in pretty good shape, to be honest with you, I think, at this point. The influent pump replacement, just to recap from last meeting, we had an influent pump that was on its way out. We bid a project to replace it. In the interim, a second pump went out. We replaced that second pump. It was then determined by the solicitor that in order to replace the first pump we wanted to replace initially, we would have to rebid the project. That would need to go out to bid formally. It's actually out to bid already, but we just wanted to come back to Borough Council, advise them. I mean, certainly I think an action would be appropriate just to make sure we're kind of keeping things going. So by the next meeting, we'll have the results of that bid process for you to actually take it on board.
So we're essentially ratifying the decision to put that project out for bid.
Correct, yeah.
Are you comfortable with that language, Bill?
Yes.
I have a question about that bid first. I was talking to the guys about the electric, Mike and Mike, and they were down when they were installing it, the influent pump, right, Kevin? This is what we talked about. And they did a lot of the electrical work, and we're wondering if that would be taken into account in this bid this time, because the company that won the bid and was installing it ended up needing their help to get it installed correctly.
Okay, we can certainly feed that in. I'll have to talk to Mike about what exactly.
Yeah, they ended up doing.
They basically said the company sent their people home.
Yeah, they did all the electrical work to install it.
Okay, I just caution that those types of events.
I just wanted to bring that to your attention.
Understood. Okay, I will talk to Mike about that. I'd be concerned that if something now happens, that we would be in the middle of that. So let me talk to him, and then we'll see what we can do with respect to the second bid. Perfect sense.
I'll make the motion to ratify the bid advertisement for the influent pump replacement.
Second.
A motion by Ms. Young, second by Mr. Crawford, to ratify the decision to advertise for the bid for the influent pumps replacement. Pump, okay, pump replacement. Any further discussion? All those in favor give your consent by saying aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Motion carries.
Last item related to the community development block grant that we received. We did put out what I will call phase one of that project to bid, which was the replacement of the main from the standpipe down to High Street on Chestnut Street. We did receive bids. That's what I distributed earlier this evening. We just received those Friday. The low bidder in that particular exercise was EK Services. Came in with a base bid amount of $245,542. We did also bid a deduct alternate, we call it, because that original bid was based on the use of ductile iron pipe, a very common substitute for ductile iron is what they call C900. It's a PVC pipe, plastic pipe. And we we requested that they provide us a price if we were to go with the C900, what that deduct would be. In that particular case, it was $19,940 would come off the price. The reason I bring that up is that the grant award was roughly $200,000. Now that was based on a fairly aged opinion of probable costs, which was prepared about 5-6 years ago. We weren't even involved in it, so it doesn't surprise me that's a little bit higher than what the grant amount is, but that would be an option to the borough if they so choose to either go with the base bid, which would be the ductile iron pipe, or the C900.
What are your thoughts on the two?
Well, ductile iron has been around for 100 years. It is the tried and true answer. You know, this is the central transmission main, if you will, for the upper part of town. Makes complete sense to me to use it. Certainly C900 has very similar properties. It just hasn't been tested. I guess I'm a little old school in that fact that I'd rather see the ductile iron in particular for that particular area. But it's your decision. I think equally they will perform well beyond any of us sitting in this room. We'll have to worry about it. So when they're cutting down the next round of forest in 100 years, then that's when this decision will be important. So,
any thoughts, Kevin?
I'm in favor of the ductile iron only in the event that you're chasing after a leak. Heaven forbid. Ductile iron you can easily trace. If you're into plastic, it's much harder to find.
That's good information. Thank you.
So essentially this evening we did, we just got these bids in on Friday, so we did kind of have a flurry of activity yesterday and today with CEDACOG getting things squared away. We still have a couple more things to do with respect to officially kind of awarding that, getting that squared away. But we did tonight, we're looking for action from Borough Council to at least be able to issue our notice of award, we call it, to EK, let them know they were indeed the low bidder. And we don't even, I want to say necessarily need to make a decision on the ductile iron this evening. But it would be good to know what direction we are thinking of going.
I think a $20,000 investment over 100 years breaks down to pennies per, pennies per short. I'll move that we authorize Pinoni to notify EK Services Incorporated of New Cumberland. They are in fact the lowest bidder with the intention to proceed with the $245,542 amount with the ductile iron pipe.
Second.
I've made the motion. Ms. Young has seconded it. Is there any further discussion? All in favor, give your consent by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.
I have nothing further, aside from our report. If anybody has any questions, I'll be happy to answer them.
Does anyone have anything for the engineering firm? Butcher Shop Road, the culvert. We have now determined, I believe, from the surveys that is ours. I think that was kind of our last ditch effort to make sure it was ours, and we had to spend $100,000. Is there any reason not to do that this summer?
Money?
Well, we have it, I believe, in highway.
Okay. Then no. I mean, it would just be a matter of getting that approved through PennDOT. We've got to do that and get that part of the process moving. I do believe our permit, we would need to make sure that continues to be drug out that direction, but yeah, we can get that moving. I think realistically, you're not gonna be doing it until fall.
Right.
Which does bring up the issue with paving, you know, you might have a hard time, depending on the timing, getting permanent paving in the wintertime. So the other scenario, and I will say that it's been my experience, if you bid something late fall, you kind of are getting on the books for the guys for next year, you tend to get a little bit better price. But of course, there's escalation in that time period too, so it's a dart shot.
I think we've identified, you know, Frank brought this up probably 4 years ago, 3-4 years ago now,
Yes.
as a safety concern. And I think we keep kicking it down the road. I would like to move forward with it.
I'll second.
I'll move to authorize Pinoni to move forward then, assuming monies from highway aid, from liquid fuels for the Butcher Shop Road culvert.
Second.
I've made the motion.
Ladies first.
Give Ms. Young the second. Any further discussion?
I would recommend that it goes out for bid this fall and replacement spring to summer of next year. But I agree with him, your bidding will be a lot lower, because you'll start lining up next year's work.
And the escalation typically depends on like oil costs and things like that.
That, how busy, that, you know, I mean, people have work right now, so that tends to drive the cost up as well.
It's only my suggestion.
I'm okay with that. I just want to have some finality with it. I know it's still going to happen.
That's fine.
Are you okay with that for the second, Kristen?
Absolutely.
Any further discussion?
When you say fall, what are you thinking? Like September, October?
We'd probably put it out in September, bids would come back in October, you know, November-ish, we would be there, and then we'd be ready to go, like, March 15th, you know, start cutting.
I've made the motion, Christie has seconded it, to move forward with advertising or taking bids this fall for work completion beginning of spring 2018 for the Butcher Shop Road culvert. Any further discussion? All those in favor give your consent by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Anything for the engineering? Anything else from your end?
No, sir, thank you.
Thank you. Move on then to the public works operator. Ben Hoke here tonight from Pest.
Good evening, good news on the water side. If anybody has not heard, the reservoir is released. So we are back to normal operating procedures on the water side of things. On the report, our report, the water loss, don't let that number stray or scare anybody, because keep in mind, we were filling the reservoir, which wasn't making itself to town. So that's unaccounted water until now. Now that water is being released, so.
Right.
I can tell you that since the liner has been put in place, our typical numbers was about 133,000 gallons of water a day used. We've still been pushing some to the reservoir, bringing some to town, but in the last 2 weeks, I just looked at numbers, we're down in the 115, 120. So that liner we definitely had a bigger leak than what I think was initially thought, so, and that has been resolved. The reservoir is not leaking, and our wells are actually running a little bit more stable, so good news from the water side. In addition to that, we did do our first set of lead and copper sampling again. Next set's scheduled to be, we're thinking, middle of July. So we hung the bottles out, we've collected, we're going to resample again. That'll complete us hopefully for this year.
And when do you expect to have the numbers back on that first sample?
The first set, they told me 14 days, so 2 weeks, and that was done last week, so next week, I'm thinking, to the end of the week, we should have those results.
I look forward to hearing that.
Kevin, with the reservoir, have we had to do, add like additional chemicals or anything? Has it affected us in that way with the water? Having the reservoir in there?
Initially, to bring it back?
Right.
We were using more than usual.
But since then,
Why?
it's.
Yeah, but we were able to obtain the numbers we needed. Initial startup, it was abnormal compared to prior to the launch.
That's what you had told me, that's why I was wondering if that.
But we were able to stabilize that and everything's okay. Any other questions on the water?
Will the test results be going back to the individual homeowners?
Yep. We're gonna have to copy the homeowners that were sampled. I can tell you that we needed 20 samples taken for DEP. We set out, I think, 26 or 27. So I'm not sure which ones were not included with DEPs, but yes, all results they have to be posted. So if you don't get a result within a month or so, contact the borough, see me as I'm around in town. And I'll make sure that number one, didn't get lost, misplaced, whatever, or if you were one that had sampled, that it was not, I think, your instance, you were in that first round. There were some that came in the afternoon. Those did not make it because the courier picked up in the morning. So if it came in Wednesday afternoon, those guys were not included in that sample. So 6 of them did not get done, so. But all results will be notified to the owners as well as the state and the borough and everybody else, so. Yeah.
This whole project process is pretty arduous. It's pretty regulated, so it'll be wide open.
I assume, but I was just checking.
Yes.
On both the water and sewer request for the customer complaint forms to go back to Pesky, has that been put into place? Is that, I don't think that's something we need action from the table on, but I want to make sure it's noted and being taken care of.
Yeah, they are informed, they're not right now getting forms, because we don't really have a form that customers fill out, but they are notified. In fact, the process that's in place is that when we get a complaint, they're notified first, and then if they want our staff to assist in responding to it, they come back to me, and then I notify Mike. That way, we don't trip over each other, and it's their license on the lines, and they're making the decisions in that regard.
That seems like the logical process to me.
So do you guys need a piece of paper or an email, or how do you, is there a better process to be doing that?
I just wanted to make this public knowledge. Sometimes we were in communication, sometimes things just happened. It's been resolved, but I felt it necessary to put on record so that if there was objections, or are we doing this, or a better way, I just wanted it to be known.
Okay.
I mean, there was cases prior that things were found out weeks afterwards, and then it's a little too late, so.
What would happen is occasionally, like we get a complaint, our guys would jump on it trying to be responsive and help people, but in the process, we don't know then if they're, they know pretty much what they're doing, but at the same time, if they don't do something by the book and DEP is gonna come after anything, it's Pesky's license, and they're the operators, so they should be the ones making those calls on things, and that's how we've restructured things.
The other is on the wastewater treatment. There were 2 customer complaints. I'm assuming one of them we already got the letter on. Is there anticipation of another situation coming?
That's sort of what spurred that. I mean, we were brought into the situation, and I'm thinking, well, how many other times has somebody had an issue that I wasn't aware of? So that's sort of what instigated that, because I was aware of the 2. I don't know, I haven't been in contact with the first incident that, I don't know.
Okay.
Nobody has said anything to me, but, and that was sort of the reason that we can follow up. And if there is, Chris comes to me and says, hey, I got something from so, well, if I don't know, and he's getting a letter he doesn't know, then I don't know how to react to it. So
Right.
we are working together. Yep, I'm aware of it. This is actually a confirmed case, and we can move forward that way. So I don't know about the first incident, other than I know that it was a blockage. I don't know ramifications, what had happened prior to us discovering.
Okay.
That I don't know.
All right, thank you.
I do know there were several water complaints, and I had worked with Paul on doing so. But in running all the stuff with the reservoir and chasing after and watching water consumption, if there's a complaint and it's looked after, and all of a sudden we're losing water, that in my mind would be a good place to go look for a leak. You know what I mean? So if I'm not aware of a phoned-in event, and all of a sudden we're having issues, and I'm not aware of something, at least now we can communicate and we know points of interest, let's put it that way, to start detecting and trying to be a little more proactive instead of waiting till after it's over and done.
I know everybody's been a little bit busy with things that have been going on, but if we need to develop some sort of process to ensure that the communication's clear, we can certainly work with the borough manager to make sure that happens.
Yeah, I think right now we're good, but I wanted to make it known, and if somebody objected or said, oh, place of work where we do, we're just putting it out there.
Yeah, I mean, I think it could be formalized in some way, just to make sure, because communication has continuously been an area that we've been trying to improve, so we want to make sure that you get all the information you need. So, yeah, we can work through that if we need to.
Kevin, do you have anything else?
Just real quickly on the wastewater, we did have a demo. The company came in and they did demonstrate the screw press for 2.5 days. It did run as expected. In doing so, it was sort of unique to me in the fact that some of the issues, they had one issue, and it was a similar issue to our current belt press, is they were losing water pressure. So as Greg has previously stated, that on our action items, pressure reducing valves, we can't just put this new press or whatever determined we're going to do in place and think that's the answer, because this press that they demoed has shown water pressure is part of our problem. So that needs, we can put a new piece of equipment in, but if we don't fix the internal infrastructure, we're still going to have issues. So I talked to Greg and I said they had the same problem with water that we had on the old press, so we need to bump up some of those things, maybe reprioritize or put forth effort a little sooner than others on that, and that was one of them, the old Headworks building. We gotta look at those water lines, because it wasn't providing adequate pressure. When I put a garden hose onto the city line, it ran fine. So that was a true telltale. Same machine sitting there. The only difference was city water off the garden hose versus the plant water.
Let us know what you need from us to move that forward, if anything.
So, we're working on a time frame and we'll get things moving along. Some of the other things on that item list real quickly, that wasteline check valve, we're currently have that part, we pulled apart. It is being sent out to be, re-welded and machined down to fit, because that check valve is no longer replaceable with that part. The company's still in business, they just don't manufacture that part anymore. If this doesn't work, it's going to be a whole valve replacement, which we're trying not to do, but we're going to try to rebuild this piece. It's a metal flat, for better terms of purpose, so we're redoing that. Elm Street manhole, I think we had approval to get that piece of pipe in there, grout it in place. We
Yeah, that was the
should
plan.
come up with some sort of a time frame and get that done while things are starting to dry out. I know it's not done yet. 2 weeks ago we pulled the lid and it's still full. So we should put that on the calendar within the next month.
You and I'll schedule that and get with Mike.
And is that a temporary solution or a partial solution?
Yes, because that line's
The full
gonna be in
solution is
place.
part of our funding.
This is like the sleeve that'll go through.
Right. And it's not on the list, but I'm thinking out loud here, we've done tremendous work to the plant itself. Properly running. If you go back prior to the plant when it wasn't running, and if you think about the common areas down and out, we've had pumps going down and out, we've been ultimately, those failures have been caused partly by, they've extended their lifetime, but they were sort of abused due to the I&I. And I would put it out there in the open meeting that we ought to think about, at the very least, some sort of smoke testing to see if we have main issues in town, and also possibly develop a plan to televise and clean the lines. The two sewer blockages in town were both roots in the lines.
Both
And when
what?
they cleaned them, they
Roots,
tree
okay,
roots.
thank you.
If, per se, such a plan that we do so much of the town every year, that in 5 years all of town is done, we probably wouldn't have had the blockages. Talking to Paul and the guys, when Lonnie was here was the last time the lines were cleaned, that was back in 11. So we're
That sounds right.
over the 5-year interval that is typically recommended.
So you're saying there's likelihood at minimum that we'll see more blockages and more issues in the lines because.
Yeah.
Would that be something you could do, Greg, or would that fall under?
Yeah, and I talked to Kevin, I actually think we did it a couple of years ago, it just may not have made it out of certain
Okay.
places, so I think I want to dig that up, and we'd carved off town into like 5 segments, and, we tried to come up with
Because
a.
we can take that at my committee at the next meeting.
Okay,
And
let me dig that
get
out.
something started. And then with smoke testing, I'll make the motion that we approve the purchase of the chemicals, which was, we were talking about like $1,000, Kevin?
Yeah, that's the cost of it to do it.
Because we have they do it, it's not, there's no additional cost other than the chemicals, so I'll make that motion that we.
You want to go up to 1,500?
I was gonna say, let's go up to 1,500 to purchase the chemicals.
I'll second.
We have a motion by Mr. Kirkhoff, a second by Ms. Young to allocate $1,500 for smoke testing supplies for the borough sewer lines. Any further discussion?
And I guess I can amend my motion to have our workforce assist in ways that may, if there is additional help needed.
I'm okay with that amendment.
Amending the ordinance to include, or amending the motion to include the use of the borough staff wherever appropriate. Any further discussion? All those in favor give your consent by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.
And what do you think would be the best time to do that, Kevin?
July, August,
July, August.
dry time.
That's what I thought we talked about that, once it got dried out.
And then pending Pinotti's information on the line with the televising. Flushing. We can get from you some kind of proposal, like if there's an area that may be more problematic because of grade or something like that to start and try to budget that, prepare that for finance for the, August, September timeframe to start, at least 2018, what's the highest priority?
We did televise some last year, correct?
Yeah, we did the meadow.
We did the Meadows and Elm Street,
So we could
that
use
section.
that.
You did part of High Street too.
Yeah, that's right, we did the dip down in High Street too.
And that was because we knew we had significant I&I in that area.
But next place you'll clean is Prospect.
Oh, and there was televising done this week on a small section that would be done too.
Yes.
And we're gonna get that, I think.
Yep,
Right.
absolutely, yeah.
Just, I don't want that to get lost.
Right.
There's some costs associated with it, so I want to make sure it's,
Right.
at least on the radar for next year to start.
My recommendation would be for you to put out a maintenance contract.
Yep.
X amount of feet per year. You get a much better deal if you do that.
Would it be that we would probably do the stuff that's been replaced, not recently, past 10 years? Last, would that be how you would?
Yeah, I think we do Market Street, for example, last,
Right.
that section there. I think the priority in conjunction with the smoke testing is also gonna drive us to where we need to start. If some area of town looks like it's on fire, then, we know we have a problem, so, we'll probably wanna start digging in those areas. We might have to jump around, even this first year, we may jump around a little more than we normally would, to get a handle on things, but that would be the idea.
Kevin, you wanted to talk too about the manholes, because we had some concerns down on Water Street too.
Yeah, need to get with Roger and Borough Crew. We do have about 7 manholes that we just need to get equipment down there, battery operated or generator with electric, and get those lids off. And that's the last line item there at the Water Street manholes. We want to do that here in the next month. It's been on the list, it's just with the press and different reservoirs, that's taken a side track to it, but now
Been a little
things are
busy.
drying out a little bit, we want to get down there and get in there.
You got anything else? Anything else from the table for Mr. Hope? Thank you. Thank you, Jeff. Move on then to the borough solicitor, Mr. Dissing.
I have been in correspondence and discussions with Blue Ridge concerning the cable franchise renewal. I had made a formal offer to renew at the current percentage rate of 3% fee, but with the condition that a internet connection be put in at the sewage wastewater treatment plant, and then one here as well as with a cable TV. They have formally denied that, and basically told me to go away. So, question then arises as to where we want to go from here. The franchise agreement has technically run out, although they will continue to operate under the old one for some period of time.
They give any indication what the stumbling block is, or is that?
No, they said they don't do that. They never did that. They're never going to do that.
Do what?
Put 2 connections. They will only do 1.
Did you ask them about Wheatfield Township?
Yeah, I did. That was their response. They've never, not going to do it. So, we can continue to push them. You know, they're the one who's out of franchise, and I think probably that's what we ought to do. Alternative would simply be renew with the connection here and buy whatever we need to buy at the wastewater treatment plant. But we also have the option of increasing the fee. We're at 3% now. We can go up to 5%. By my kind of, like I say, non-dynamic scoring, that would add an additional $7,000 in revenue. Probably less, because it would probably make it, there'd be less people using it, you know, that sort of thing.
And
But
they
you could
passed
you could do less.
That's right on the bill passed already.
Yeah, that's the problem. No municipality wants to do that because it looks like a tax increase. So,
I believe we push.
Yeah, can we go back and make them a lower offer?
agreed. I will.
2.75% and the 2 connections?
I will continue. That's fine.
That's a
I just
consensus
wanted
of the
a little guidance. I don't need a motion or anything.
There's no harm.
We'd like the connection at the sewer plant because with the upgrades, it'll have a SCADA system that, you know, Pessy will be able to, instead of having to send somebody here every time an alarm goes off, a lot of things will be able to be done remotely.
And we've been talking about security and cameras and things like that,
That
different
too.
places, and that's gonna be all, you know, internet-based.
As an interesting aside, I asked them to put their statement in writing, which they refused to do. So,
I sat in many meetings in Wheatfield Township where they have the TV, phone, internet service at the township office. They don't currently have service at Wagner Park, but, you know, part of the agreement has been, I haven't read the agreement, but it's been said on the record repeatedly, that when and if it's available in the area of Wagner Park, it's gonna be added at Wagner Park, so. Maybe I'll get a copy of that agreement.
We even offered to take care of running the wire from the sewer plant to the nearest connection, so.
And the sewer plant is next door to their station.
right,
Yeah.
that's fine.
Okay.
Go get them, Bill.
Anything further for this? Do you have anything else, Bill? I'm sorry.
Just a couple of minor things, and I don't know. Chris had mentioned some issues with signs, and as a result of my discussion.
Yeah, I'm gonna consult with you about that.
Yeah, and I have looked at your sign ordinance, and it's peculiar.
There's a lot of conversation.
Needs to be reviewed.
That's within the zone.
Yeah, but I'll consult with normally, this is contained in your zoning ordinance, and normally it would go to your planning commission for review, but generally have a planning commission. So.
We were unable to get them together last summer.
So we'll work it out, but it's just something that I was taking a look at. You should be aware of. The other item that I need to consult with Chris on that I've taken a look at is the question of security deposits. That needs that's specifically needs to be addressed. So I'll work on that with Chris.
I looked very quickly at our sign ordinance just a few weeks ago because there was some discussion outside of the borough during the recent primary election about some signs and displays and locations, and I had a spirited discussion with a gentleman about, signage and First Amendment and all of that. And I read some case law outside of Perry County where, some things that were overturned by, I think, the state Supreme Court, included like you can only have signs up for a certain period of time before, after the election, things like that. And I know there are some timeframes in our ordinance that I didn't think were there.
There's actually a United States Supreme Court case out on this, which requires that your sign ordinance be content blind.
Right.
Which is very interesting.
It gets into religious and political signs specifically.
The Supreme Court case was specific to a religious sign, which, it's one of those things that hard cases make bad law, so.
I think the argument you're talking about is a local municipality near us that the ACLU was interested in joining the conversation.
That was the threat.
Yeah.
And that was
They have been involved, they have been involved in Pennsylvania.
And I remember our former solicitor, providing us with some guidance several years ago about, content blind. And I understand that, I support that, I get that. And that was when the current ordinance, I thought, was properly amended to basically be, concern square footage, concern size.
Right.
But again, I saw the time frame, which was alarming to me because there are state cases in at least 2 other counties in the Commonwealth where the time frame, like 10 days before the election, 2 days after the election, whatever, was overturned.
That was one of the things that I saw in there, yeah. You do have, it does require a zoning permit to put up a sign unless it's one of the exempt signs.
Right.
Which are your political sign, yard sales. So, if a sign goes up, it's in violation if it doesn't have a permit, and the purpose of the permit is to see if it complies with our ordinance, so.
The situation that I think you're referring to, we had a similar situation in the borough, in the downtown area. We ended up sending that property a zoning notice about that sign, but not because of the time limit that it was up after the election, but that once it was up longer than that, then it was no longer under our temporary signs. It was a permanent sign, and it was too big based on, and not permitted. They'd have to have a permit. They'd be allowed to have that content on the sign, but it would have to fit our zoning. But the reason I asked the solicitor to take a look at it was particularly, we've got a new business coming to town, kind of outdoorsy, and, I did talk to them about, and they turned in their permit request for their sign, and I hadn't even looked closely at the ordinance prior, and I started looking at their permit request, and they have 25 feet of footage, which qualifies up for a 2.5 square foot sign. So right now, the way things stand, and I need to consult with Bill further, but I think, my understanding is they have to go to zoning hearing board.
That's correct.
Which is a $500 fee for the hearing and so forth. So I think that, it's a kind of a thing where if council takes a look at it, we'll keep their application on hold, and, they won't be in violation, but they won't be granted their permit until council takes a look at the ordinance and makes a decision on that.
Exactly. It should be, that's the part that should be changed, as a practical matter.
And we have other businesses that, over the years, have put up signs that probably never, and this isn't unique to Duncannon. I don't want to make it sound like I'm criticizing my predecessors. I mean, they just, it was something that happened and that people didn't really pay much attention to. There were other things to worry about. And I could tell you that until the past couple of months, I really didn't pay much attention to the signs because we had so many other things going on, so.
Good. Anything else?
No.
Anything for the solicitor from the table? Thank you, Mr. District. You're welcome. Well, in fire protection, I don't see the fire chief here. And if he comes in later, we'll talk to him. How about the mayor, Mayor Capuano?
A couple things. A grant from the Commonwealth Financing Authority for sidewalks. Has anybody looked at that? Chris, do you want it? The deadline on it is July 31st.
What exactly is it?
It has to do with transportation, but it actually has to do with streetscape lighting and sidewalk enhancement, pedestrian safety,
So it's to apply for the grant by,
July 31st.
okay, so I'd have to have something ready for next council meeting.
But I think if you're looking at it from a, we have sidewalks that have,
We have sidewalks that need some attention.
that need
Yeah.
some work.
Right.
It's at least worth looking into.
Is that in?
No,
Okay.
it's in a magazine.
Alright.
Chris, you want to take a look at it too?
Yeah, I don't believe that program is for repairing existing sidewalks. I think it's more for like, for example, if we were going to do a streetscape program in the downtown, and, comprehensive,
Yeah.
as far as our sidewalks are most of the sidewalks are the responsibility of the property owner. And Tony hasn't been emphasizing that, but it is something he'll be taking a look at, in the summer here. And
So as I like to say, before we say no, let's at least take a look at it.
absolutely.
There's another one too. It's neighborhood planning and implementation grants. It's actually for Eastern PA, but our county does fall into it. And it's really about neighborhood planning grants to support neighborhood planning process. That deadline's September 1st. So that's another one that we might look into.
What magazine's that in?
Borough News.
Oh, the Borough News, okay.
Yeah, Borough News, Chris. You get that?
What month is that?
This month.
I didn't get that one yet.
June.
I didn't get it.
Okay.
If not, there's someone at the table, I'm sure has one.
Yeah, definitely. I'll bring that to the next meeting.
Okay. Again, it's just, there's a couple of interesting grants in there. Then I did hand out, I talked about this at the finance meeting, and there's a sample, the borough of New Cumberland has a residential rental dwelling unit inspection ordinance that I'd like us to take a look at. Again, with the properties being so much rental in the borough, having some sort of process in place and how we can manage it. Now, I will tell you, they are hiring a full-time codes enforcer. Sorry, Tony. I talked last month about the quality of life ticketing ordinance from Danville. I did get a copy of it. I gave you guys all a copy of what their actual ordinance is. Yeah, I think there's some good information in there. They have seen light go down drastically since 2015. So I think it's an opportunity for us to really kind of take a look at what opportunities we have to do the same thing. It's working there, so this ordinance is working. And then I also put in a junior council program. I think that there's a lot of great information for junior council, to get an opportunity to get the youth involved. Jeff had said that there was a time where we had introduced this before. I think it's something that we need to put out there. If, council's interested in looking at this, there's a lot of information that I printed just from the PSAB website, that they support it. If you look in the Borough Magazine, there's a lot of awards being given out to junior council members within their communities. We're always looking to get youth involved. I think it's just a great opportunity for us to take that, put it out there. Is anybody interested? Let's see what the interest is in there.
We had a young lady last year who was at a meeting for 15 minutes or so, and I don't think has returned.
No.
Has anyone heard anything from her?
Our mother's here. Was that embarrassing?
That's right.
I think it was for school or something
Yeah.
like that, yeah.
Are you her mother? Sorry to come back.
I tried to get her to come tonight. I think she's doing something to see her picture or something like that. But yeah, I should try to get her involved in it, yeah.
She was our pilot for this program. We want to give her awards.
And you can have more than one as well. You can have multiple, so it's not limited to one.
Well, and I think it's a critical piece, we can't even get folks to fill positions on the planning commission and the zoning hearing board and things like that. You know, we've got vacancies that are going unfilled because we don't have folks that are interested, so.
It's a lot, you're right, it's a lot, I mean, for council members to come in new, there's a lot of information. I think having a junior council member or two, you know, and I'm even looking at like late middle school and up, you know, I would be more, I like to see it more from an age perspective than a grade perspective. Talks a lot about college and high school, but I think even if you get to like that 13 and up, you know, get people involved, get them into the into the committee side of it, and let them see how it's working. It's not going to cause any harm. You might actually cause a council member, you know, as they get older.
We just have to control the end of our meetings so they're not violating curfew walking home.
I'm barely able to stay on most of our meetings.
New Cumberland one, have you talked to anybody down in New Cumberland?
So
Because I believe their codes officer is a former Penn Township police officer.
Okay. The interesting thing about New
He's in
Cumberland.
Lemoyne, are you sure? I talked to him last
He's in Lemoyne.
Cliff is? Okay. Well, I thought he was in New Cumberland.
So
He's in
New
Lemoyne.
Cumberland's going through a lot of what we're going through right now. Their mayor is actually leaving. They have a new mayor, you know, on the ballot for next year, and they have ironically 5 new council members that are leaving, and you know, so the people that I talked to weren't necessarily the greatest of people from that perspective, just because a lot of them aren't coming back. So I didn't buy into a lot of the things that they were saying. But if you read the ordinance is pretty in depth. It's every 5 years that they're doing inspections. And again, knowing that our rental units are about 50% in the borough, it might be a way of us kind of helping control that.
We do have an ordinance that was passed in late 2015, actually I think summer 15, requiring a property manager, which I saw some like points of contact and property owner and things. And I don't, you know, the expectation with that, I think when it was passed was enforcement wouldn't begin until the beginning of 16. And I think with everything else we've had go on, it's really gone inside. That was passed at the same time as the windows and doors ordinance, which we now inside. So, you know, some of these components are in place, and I firmly believe with everything we have that, you know, before we start adding anything new, and I understand your rationale for proposing this, but I think we need to get under control what we have and find out, number one, if it's appropriate, if we need to get rid of it. And number two, if we're not enforcing what we have, adding more, you know, we're just gonna put a workload that we're already doing what we're supposed to do.
Yep, I don't disagree at all. I found the information.
thank
It'd
you,
just be
thank you.
good information to bring to committees.
As mayor, would you be interested in reaching out to Evan Berenstein directly and seeing if she still is interested? And, you know, maybe moving this program forward, and maybe formalize the program. There's some great tips, and I've just seen this tonight. To more formalize the program, I saw the pledge and things like that, and, you know, maybe she can be part of creating that, and it'll make her more engaged from that perspective.
Yep, I'll take that.
Is there school credit involved with that? I represent Mechanicsburg Borough, and they actually have a program that it's a class. That's pretty far down the road, but I mean, it's not.
I didn't see that.
I didn't see that in there, but I can reach out to Mechanicsburg as well. That's all I had.
Thank you, John. Anything for the mayor from the table? Also in the mayor's report, we have the codes enforcement, and Anthony is here this evening, also has submitted a written report. Do you have anything to add to the written report?
At this time, that's the question.
Anything from the table on the written report? Very good, thank you. Anyone from the table for Mr. Capelon?
Can I have copies of your papers that you hand out then?
Yep.
And did you give copies to Bill as well?
I did not.
Just, you know, he may already be familiar with how the ordinances.
On that, I know some of the municipalities work through the schools to develop participants.
That's what this looks like it suggests.
Yeah, that's usually how it works.
That's what we did last year, too.
Yeah. So that means you're gonna be putting us off till.
Right,
School
but if
starts
we get the baseline of what the program looks like and the expectations from the young ladies or young men to do it, to be involved, you know, we can do that before school begins, and then, you know, I'm sorry, what was her name again?
Evan Berenstein.
Okay, if she is interested in at least guiding us in what would be attractive, what would be appropriate, what she'd be comfortable with, if she's going to continue to be the person, you know, that may be maybe a good start even before school begins.
I think it has a lot to do with council members as well, because you're talking about them coming to committee meetings, you know, and making sure that you're that mentor to them, that they're not getting lost in the shuffle. I already ruled you out. So, and, you know, I think you have, and that's a commitment. It's a commitment to say, they're gonna be coming to a committee meeting. We need to make sure that they're involved. I mean, it talks about at council meetings, them sitting up at the table.
Right.
You know, there is a commitment that, you know, helps them with public speaking. I just think that there's a lot of positives to this, and as we've seen going into next year, we had a hard time getting people.
It's a requirement that they be involved. Like, that's a requirement to fulfill the junior council person is they.
So I don't want us to jump into it, but I definitely think it's something to, as we are becoming more organized, as we're getting everything else in order, I think that this just helps us become more relative.
And I think we saw from the primary, those on the ballot, those not on the ballot, and some of the names that were thrown around, some of the names that weren't thrown around, that, we'd love to have more competition, more interest, and more engagement in local government. That's my opinion. This may be a way to start that process. Anything else?
I'm good.
We want to the easiest report of the evening, the secretary's report. Manager, the secretary. Borough Manager, Mr. Corrigan.
Thank you, Mr. President. You have my written report. A number of the things in my report are actually on the agenda under the committees. I just put some information in the brief you want them. One in particular has to do with under Parks and Recreation, Friday night, the Fiddle and Film event. Folks, if you're not aware of it already, you should be. Up at Cooper Field, we're going to show a film about the AT and then have a concert by a bluegrass band that has music in the film, and it's completely free. Parks and Rec, Roger's got refreshments all lined up. Those are not free. This is going to be a fundraiser for the Parks and Rec Department. I want to thank Riverview Bank and Pannoni for their sponsorship of the event. So that, on the agenda, you'll see there's a request for some no parking restrictions to help the traffic flow, because the one drawback of the Cooper Field location is accessibility, and so we're going to try to have a traffic pattern that we route people out the one way and in the other way, and try to make it as easy for people to get in and out as possible. The other thing that's mentioned in my report, but just for the public, it's not anything that we need to take action on, but you already did approve for a second cleanup day and electronics recycling event, and that will be on Saturday, July 15th. Leads me into the next thing. The newsletter will be going to press beginning of next week. It has to be distributed because of the water report by the end of this month. I still have some space if people have last minute things to get me. I did get some information from the council president and some dates, some menus for, I think Roger does the cooking out there, doesn't he? For the Sunday dinners at the EMS for the community calendar. Folks, if you have community.
Don't ever tell anyone who works in the kitchen. They won't come.
Yeah, don't you?
They have a guest chef,
Wastewater treatment?
a guest chef that does the cooking. If you're part of a nonprofit or community group and have items for the community calendar in the newsletter, send them to Kathy K. Bauer at Duncannon Borough, or just send them to manager at duncannonborough.org, but get them to us right away, and we'll add those to the calendar. As far as action items, the only thing I have listed here for you is the water line replacement bid authorization. And for the public, so you understand, with the lead water program that we talked about earlier during the engineer's report and also with PESI, we have a requirement to address replacing a certain percentage of lines that may be lead in the borough. Now, part of that replacement program, they have a thing, DEP has a thing called replacement by testing, whereas if we test a location and it does not exceed the limits for lead, then that is considered replaced. It doesn't, you don't have to physically replace it. However, we won't know the results of our testing until we do that second round in July, and we need to be prepared to do the replacements if we find any necessary before the end of September. We're looking at, Greg, if you recall, was it about 650
Customers?
customers?
Total, and then there was 46.
Yeah, so we have to test 7% of that if we get to this next step. If we don't get through these 2 rounds of tests, then we'll have to deal with 7% of those, either through the testing or replacement. So the request is for you to authorize Pannoni to put together the bid documents and advertise the bids so that we can be prepared to award a bid at the would be August meeting, right? We wouldn't get it advertised in time for July. At the August meeting so that we could proceed. The way it works is that if a homeowner's got a lead line from the curb to their, to their house, that is the homeowner's responsibility, but we have to offer to do the work for them at their expense. So we would bid it that the contractor would have a price per foot of pipe or whatever, and that would be the price then that the homeowner would be billed if we get to that point. Realistically, I can't imagine us having to do even 5 replacements. I mean, our testing, with 75 tests in the borough that were done when the residents had tests, we had 2 that were high, and one of those was a church building that doesn't get used and we know has, lead and copper, lead solder and copper pipes in the church. And to give you an idea how seldom people are in the church and use the water, when we leave a voicemail for them on a Monday, we don't get a call back till like Wednesday because they're not in there every day. So that kind of explains why they had the high. We also, and Kevin, maybe you can explain, we've done further investigation into the 2 high tests that initially caused this, and I think I told you before, we retested those and they came back with no detectable lead whatsoever after having numbers that were astronomical, off the charts, to the point where a friend of mine who used to work in the Attorney General's office talked to somebody in the environmental science unit there, and he told him the only way you could get those kind of numbers is if somebody spiked the test. Nobody spiked the test. It was
Filters.
a filter system that caused the abnormal readings on it originally. So once that was taken off and the testing was just on the water. So we don't expect that we're going to have a high number of these, but we have to be prepared to be able to do these replacements in time for DEP. So we're asking for that authorization now.
Motion to give them authorization to do so.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Williams, second by Mr. Kirkhoff to authorize Pannoni to move forward with bidding pricing for residential water line replacements. I think it's not residential.
Lead water line replacements, yeah.
Any further discussion? All those in favor give your consent by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.
That's all I have, sir.
Question for the newsletter. If we're gonna start talking to residents about sidewalks, could we put something in the newsletter that might be coming up, or a reminder about sidewalks, something to get the idea out there before we
We
start?
have a full page that's devoted to codes. Right now, most of it is about the new burn ordinance, but we'll add that in.
I just, that way it's not anything new,
It's not a surprise.
Yeah.
Good idea.
Anything, I'm sure you're already on top of this, Chris, but anything that you can use, the money we've spent on sewer upgrades and, trying to get things compliant, I would be very I hate the word transparent, but I would be very honest about, we're paying $3,000 tonight on a fine, which was a reduced amount from what it could have been, but that's, in conjunction with spending thousands of dollars looking for more money to make some way past due repairs and upgrades, that a lot of good things are happening. We've had a lot of less than desirable press. We've had our share of issues over the last 18 months plus. And I think that getting some of the good stuff in there, really concentrating on some of the good stuff that's come from this table and from this room and from the people in this room is absolutely critical.
Yeah, we were planning to update on all the projects and stuff going on. We'll make sure that's all.
The lead's one that's easy to blow out of proportion, I think, and certainly a concern for some. But I think putting that into perspective, but also, you know, that we're doing some upgrades, street signs, and, you know, something I was gonna ask Jeff about, but maybe it's a better question for you, is, we talked 2 or 3 months ago, maybe longer, about the electric pole, utility pole replacement. That work hadn't really been done for some period of time, and we were hopeful to get that moving again and make sure we're checking those poles on a regular, regulated basis. So it's something, things like that, you know, if you see markings on poles or you see people getting poles, that's what we're doing. We're trying to make sure we're not gonna fall on your house. Did anyone have anything else for the manager, in reference to the newsletter or otherwise? Anything else, Chris?
Do you want me to make the motion about the road closure?
Sure.
Well, that's under Parks and Rec on the agenda.
Oh, okay, well then never mind. Project's not-
I just thought of something else. With the water conservation, voluntary water conservation ending, are we gonna do a call for that?
Already did.
Already did?
Today.
You can sign up at Duncannon Borough.
I'm signed up because I know I get them, I just might not, I might have
I
missed
got
it.
3 emails, a text message, and 2 voicemails.
Sometimes you don't answer because you don't recognize the number.
Yeah, I might have gotten a call and just missed it.
Anything else from the manager? Okay. Move on then to the approval of the treasurer's report, item number 10 on the agenda. You have before you the weekly banking review dated May 31st, 2017, as your treasurer's report. The second part of that's going to be our bills to be paid and ratified as well.
Make a motion to accept the treasurer's report subject to audit.
Second? I don't care.
I heard
AJ's
Williams.
got it.
We'll do Williams. I already had it with W ready. Motion by Ms. Young, second by Mr. Williams to accept the treasurer's report subject to audit. Any further discussion? All those in favor give your consent by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Item number 11, ratification approval of bills. That's the back half of that same packet. You have the check register. Bob, you have anything to add here? Any comments?
Nothing to add. Well, excuse me, included in bill approval is the $3,000 check for the fine that we just discussed and council approved.
That's already, I didn't see that. That's listed here?
Yes, under sewer.
Motion to ratify and approve said bills as presented.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Crawford, will second by Ms. Young to ratify and approve the bills as presented. Any further discussion? All in favor give your consent by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. On page 2. Item number 12, Roman number 12, standing committee and council committee reports. Facilities and fleet, Mr. Epley.
We didn't have any June meetings, no items came up for fleet and facilities. I'll check to see if we need a July meeting here, but at the present time, I know nothing is required or needed. If anybody does, contact with me.
Anything for fleets, I'm sorry, facility and fleets? Facilities and fleet. Okay, thank you, Mr. Epley. Letter B, Finance, Administration, and Communication, Ms. Young.
Just wanted to give a big shout out to Bob. He's been working on the statement of revenues and expenditures, trying to work on getting a document that, you know, makes sense to the general public, and then additional detail for all of us to know, you know, where we are budget for the current month, and then year to date also for the budget. He's been finding some new functionality between the billing program and the microfund accounting system that's geekily got him excited. But
we didn't get it either.
But there's a whole lot happening in the office, and I feel you know, a whole lot more at ease having Chris and Bob in these functions and moving things forward. So just, you know, we're still working on coming up with something that makes sense for the public to kind of look at and have an idea of where we stand as a borough with our finances. And then as councilmen, being able to have year-to-date information and comparisons so that we know where we're at on the budget. So a great big thank you to Bob and Chris for that. The 2014 audit is finalized and we have those results. The 15 audit is in process, but not quite yet finished. Without having 2014, 2015, and 2016 audited financial statements, we're having trouble moving forward with any of the debt ordinance in order to move forward with seeking financing from financial institutions. They're just not interested until we have those financial documents audited. So we are not at a position where we can move forward on that. It is something that we're working diligently with to make sure that we have the information, in a way that is quickly and easily reviewable, and that we can move forward to have those documents finalized.
I'm sorry. I don't want to make any unnecessary alert, but on the statement of revenues and expenditures, if you look at the first page dated 5/31, or dated 6/15, ending 5/31, we're showing that we're over budget already on the general fund and highway aid. What am I missing there?
I believe the way council adopted the budget, I think they adopted fund balance appropriation. Somewhere, if revenues were budgeted to come in less and expenditures were higher, the difference, I think, council approved as a fund balance appropriation. That's different. That's just not showing up here.
Okay.
Okay, this is purely just revenues and expenses.
Okay.
And if you recall, the budget that was approved didn't have highway aid. I don't think highway aid was even included on it. So, or no, that's current period. Never mind. Disregard.
Right. So, for example, highway aid, I believe council adopted a budget that included capital expenditures from using highway aid money. So the current year revenue stream is less than what council wants to spend in 2017 for street improvements, as an example. Okay, so the variance was that fund balance, the savings that we had from not spending what I call liquid fuels money, what you call highway aid money, last year. So we have savings, so the difference is what I just said. Does that make sense? Revenue coming from the state is only so much, but council wants to spend this year's amount of revenue from the state plus prior year revenues from the state. That's called fund balance appropriation.
So there's no reason for concern at this moment?
No.
Okay. I saw the, budget of 401,000, year-to-date 489,000, upside down by 21%. It was a concern.
No, no reason at this point to be concerned. I will inform council, Chris and I have been talking about this. It's our intention to provide council a mid-year fiscal report, which will incorporate not just facts and figures about revenues and expenses like you have before you now, but will fine-tune projections and ask council for budget transfers, if you will. After we get a better picture, by mid-year we should have a better picture of our expenses, as an example, and I'll ask for budget transfers from this surplus to cover that deficit, or I'll be able to inform council of revenues that are going to be short over here, but came in that much higher over there, that kind of thing. So
we've spent a lot of money in the last 2 years. We've transferred a fair amount from timber to other funds, and we have some major projects ahead of us for which we don't have loans secured at this point. So I'm trying not to be too excited, but the money numbers scare me.
Well, the whole why I'm here and why you hired me is to make sure that we monitor what we receive and we monitor what we spend and we control what we spend. So that's the administration's intent to do that for you.
Very good. Anything else under
Finance
Administration Communication?
I was going to ask what the time frame was on 15 when we thought we'd be getting that back.
End of...
Well, 15, the field work for 15 should be done by the end of this month. June 30th. We should have a draft. We are hopeful to have a draft financials by the end of this month. So if we can, we get them in time, that we can get the draft to the Finance Committee for their review and recommendation. There's an outside chance that it might be available for council in July, but that's iffy right now.
I'm just, because if, I mean, a bank, I didn't expect a bank to want to do anything without the 15 financial, they can't do anything. without
Well, what
the 15.
surprised us is they want 16
They want
as well.
16 also.
Well, that's what I was, that doesn't
That
surprise
surprised me, that surprised me.
That doesn't surprise me because they're at the point now where, you know, you require financials within, typically for something like this, like an audited statement, you'd say 120 days of fiscal year end. That would be the servicing requirement in the loan docs. And you give a 30-day grace period. Well, now we're getting out of that grace period, so it doesn't surprise me now that they would want 16. And as it gets farther, they definitely would need 16. That's why I was trying to figure out time frame here.
Well, as we said, we are looking to do back-to-back
Yeah.
audits.
Oh, I'm not
That's fun. That's fun.
I'm
I
not
can
saying you're not
assure
doing
you.
anything right. I'm just saying that's what I was expecting that much.
Well, the goal, and we're hopeful that 16 as well would be completed, at least in draft, by the end of September or October-ish timeframe, but it's, you know, it's pushing it. It's pushing it.
We're gonna have some, we're getting to the point where there could be issues. We gotta be real careful about procuring this equipment once the clock starts ticking on the consent order. So I know everybody's aware of that, just to bring it up again.
That's the guts of my concern.
Yeah.
Right. I guess under the administration side of it, we did go through, Chris went through the EIP report. We came up with a list of all of the recommendations and which committees they should be assigned to. So those will be handed out at the committee meetings so that they can look at it and say, yeah, this is something we want to do, no it isn't, here's what our recommendation is moving forward. So those will be forthcoming. And then the only other action item I have is to release the second quarter appropriation to the fire company. Help me with the amount again, Bob, I forget.
It's $6,250, the next quarterly payment.
So I'll make a motion to release the $6,250 to the fire company.
Second.
The motion by Ms. Young, second by Mr. Crawford, to allocate the $6,250 to Duncannon Fire Company for their second quarter contribution in 2017. Any further discussion? All those in favor give your consent by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.
They did it, that's all.
Anything else for Finance, Administration, Communication? Move on to Parks and Recreation, Mr. Wilkins.
Chris already highlighted Friday night's affair. The car show went over quite well. Chris, I thank you, your office staff, financial man for his support, and your outside workforce. They did a great job of getting the field ready. The car show wasn't quite as large as I expected it to be, but everyone had a good time and everything went well. That's basically it.
The weather affected, it was raining.
No, no, I just can't figure it out. It's a beautiful day.
Some parking restrictions to approve?
We want to put the,
It says Cherry from High to
Yes.
Prospect, Prospect from Cherry to Chestnut, and Chestnut from Prospect to the park. 5
Correct.
minutes.
correct,
So if that's Roger's motion, I'll second it.
Was that a motion? Mr.
yes.
Okay. Motion by Mr. Williams, second by Ms. Young, to restrict parking on Friday for the Fiddle and Film event from High Street on Cherry to Prospect, Prospect to Chestnut, and Chestnut to the park, from 5 until midnight, I understand.
Yes.
Any further discussion? All those in favor give consent by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Anything else on the Parks and Rec?
Nope.
Anything for Mr. Williams? Personnel, Legal, and IT, we did meet this evening. The biggest item, which we are sorely overdue, last year some things got away from us with the many changes in staffing and operations here in the office, and there were no employee rate adjustments last year with the exception of Mr. Crowley going from an hourly rate as an outside staff member to a salaried foreman. Our last raises for our staff were 15 and 14 respectively, and we have some proposed numbers following reviews that were done recently by the manager. I'd like to table that. The committee, I think, wants to look at some numbers a little more closely. We're going to give Bob a task to provide some budget information and numbers to make sure that we're in line with what was budgeted versus what we're proposing. Actually, what the committee discussed this evening was doing a slightly larger increase than what the raw numbers were from the manager. So we want to make up for some lost time and make sure we're treating our employees appropriately. That's all I have. I don't have any action items there. Anything for me? We'll move on then to public safety, Mr. Crawford.
We did not meet this month, as no one on the committee had anything they said they wanted to discuss. And I will leave explanation for resolution 2017-4, Mr. Corbin.
It's simply, we're required to adopt the National Incident Management System as a borough. It's a federal system that's set up how a uniform way that you communicate and react to emergencies, and it's all agencies and at all levels of government follow the same procedures, and basically it's our time to pass the resolution. This is we got a notice from Mr. Foltz at the county EMA about not just us, several municipalities have not yet adopted the resolution in the county and asking us to take that action.
Some background, this is a resolution that should have been adopted probably a decade ago. It was discussed at this table and kind of blown off at that time. So this is
Mr. President,
yes.
I believe that was addressed in 2012, that there was an adoption. Shortly after we had the last flood in town from the hurricane, there was a large discussion at least.
There was a lot of discussion, but I don't think the resolution
It failed at that point.
The NIMS program is a national program that Pennsylvania bought into, Governor bought into in 2006 or something, 2004. That outlines, it's a lot of bureaucratic nonsense, but the guts of it truly should streamline the process. A lot of it falls back on reimbursement. If an incident, Paul's very familiar with this, if an incident happens locally, our resources aren't available, we then go to the county. County then, determines state resources in the county. If they're not, they go to the state then goes to the federal government. That's why in the event of a disaster such as the blizzard 2016, which is just closing out now, a year and a half later, in the event of something like that, it takes a certain threshold to prompt the local agencies to, kick it up to the next level, and then you have to have so much damage or so much loss to prompt, involvement by that level. So adopting this doesn't necessarily, the federal government doesn't necessarily say you have to do it, but they're recommending strongly, and it potentially could put our reimbursements from PEMA and FEMA, as well as federal grants in jeopardy if we do not. So we have a resolution before us, 2017-4.
Motion, we adopt resolution 2017-4.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Crawford, will second by Ms. Young to adopt resolution number 2017-4 titled Adopting the National Incident Management System known as NIMS. Any further discussion? All those in favor give their consent by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Anything else on public safety? Anything for Darrell? Move on then to utilities, streets, infrastructure, Mr. Kirkhoff.
Most of the utility stuff's been covered pretty much in the sewer and water. Two things, street signs. Chris, do you want to update on that? You've been the one working on that grant.
They are ordered. With the money that we're under the budget that was set by council, the $4,000 that was appropriated, and we will be replacing almost every street sign in the borough. There were a few that when we did the inventory that were in pretty good shape, but they were few and far between. A lot of missing letters or bent signs, and also we had some places where we have signs that have a white outline around them. We have a few places in the borough where we have white signs with green lettering on them, or dark lettering. I didn't even notice which color. Yeah, I think it is now that you said that. So at any rate, we have the order in, and thanks to 3M for the grant. It'll be their highest grade reflective material. We'll start replacing them. We also ordered, included in that, new brackets for at the top of the poles. And we ordered 25 new poles, which we think is sufficient because most of the poles are in good enough shape that they can be reused. And after we completed the inventory, then I also gave Mike a copy and had him try to take a look. And he noted a couple of things, that on it that we had missed in the original inventory. So we think it's pretty comprehensive now. So I don't have a time frame from as far as how long it'll take for the signs to be produced and get here. In fact, I haven't even gotten an order acknowledgement yet back from them, so we'll keep you updated as that progresses.
Awesome. The other thing, streetlights. Did we approve buying more streetlights recently? I can't remember.
Last meeting.
Last meeting it was.
I forget the quantity or the number.
Yeah, I'd have to check, looking at my notes are in the minutes.
Okay.
I think it was to finish Market Street,
Yes.
if I recall.
But we still need these two on High Street that were storm damaged too.
Was that part of
Yes.
I just wanted to make sure we'd already approved that before I wrote it anywhere. So we can get that, maybe we can use two of those rather than finishing Market Street. We'll at least get those two replaced and to come back prior to those two more. I think that's all I have.
Anything on the utility pole?
We had talked about it, we didn't have them, well, I wasn't at a meeting this month, I don't know, did you two meet?
No, I wasn't around either, I was in Virginia.
Yeah, I was in Florida, so we didn't have a meeting this month. We've had that discussion, but we've had it that we want to set up a plan to.
Right. And that's,
Go
I
through.
believe what we had after the pole came down, Mr. Wolfersburg thing, we had a, very reactive, instead of proactive approach.
Right.
But it was something in place, and then my understanding from the foreman was that the former manager indicated there's no money, we need to stop the program. So the
Correct.
poles haven't been surveyed in 3 or 4 years at
Right.
least. So I'm pretty sensitive about that, so I want to make sure we're not going to get anybody hurt, we're going to take on property that can be avoided.
Mike was working on getting the information from, because Henkel's does that for us. And
Yeah, that's what he
so
told
as soon
me.
as that comes back, we'll bring that to the.
Yeah, that came up back in November when we had the outage, the planned outage.
Yeah, and I'm not sure, I think maybe it just fell through the cracks. I'll double check with Mike on it and we'll get moving on it.
Anything else, utilities, streets, and infrastructure?
Just to make sure that we're on track, reading last month's minutes, it doesn't look like we actually took any actions on the streetlights. It just says Mr. Kirkhoff stated there are more streetlights needed to complete the Market Street light. I thought, the way I remembered it, I thought we did too, but that's not the way the minutes read, and I just want to make sure that we're on track to keep that moving.
And I'll make a motion that we procure lights to finish Market Street, as discussed previously, and an additional 2 lights to replace the ones that were down in the power outage.
Is that money already, I'm sorry, I'll second discussion, is that money already covered in the budget?
We had done that, did we do the first set out of Highway 80?
I don't
I
know
believe the
that we
first
did.
set was done out of electric.
Yes,
But
because
I
I was
don't
done
know.
out of street lights because someone informed me we don't have a street light account.
So I don't,
Yeah, but that's what it was, it came out of electric fund. But you want to put an additional, not to interrupt you. If you use up what you have no spares.
Do we
So
have a,
if you say finish Market Street, 2 for High
do
Street.
we have like a not to exceed number in mind?
I don't know what the current price is. I know there's no current deals on buy 10, get 10 free. That deal's over with, because we've used up the 40s and the 70s. That's the only 2 deals there was. And we used up those. I think they're about 120 a piece on the 70-watt LEDs. I believe, I'm not sure, Craig, anymore.
Do we know how many?
So I'm
how
gonna
many
say
are
if
left on
you
market?
need 40, that's what? $4,000?
$6,000.
Do you wanna put a limit of?
I don't know,
Not to
how many are left
exceed.
on market?
We had to count, but I don't have it with me.
Do you know, Chris?
I don't know.
We did count, Mike and I don't remember. If it's before yesterday, I don't. Something with age. If you just wanna put a part, not to exceed. And Mike does a little crying to the sales reps, sometimes he gets a couple extra. Paul was good.
We have a motion with a second to replace the rest of the streetlights on Market Street plus 2 on High. But we don't have any kind of number attached to that.
I don't really know what Market Street is.
Is the electric?
No rough idea in your head, neither do you.
I was gonna check with Bill, I don't know that the electric fund is the one that should be
Probably if
used.
it's 30, I went talking about Market Street yet. I'd probably say 30 on Market Street. Being honest with you, Craig, I would probably go with 40. That's your due Market Street plus 2 them 2 on High Street plus give you a couple extra.
Yeah.
So you're guessing they're $120 a piece. Do we need the?
Is that about right, Paul?
Well, I
The
don't
last
remember
price
that.
you gave us?
I don't remember what that was.
Are all the arms on that section good?
No. Some arms you can reuse. Wait,
Yeah.
on that end, they should all be good arms. Reusable arms.
No, we'll have to have the arms for the newer lights,
All right.
because they're all the standard lights that we have on, they're not in the square. Square, we didn't need them,
Right.
so you'll have to have the arms with them too.
How much do the arms cost?
The arms ain't that much. The arms
No,
are
they're
like
cheap.
15
I was gonna say, they're
bucks, something
15,
like
20
that, the
bucks.
arms.
Yeah.
So could we do a price not to exceed, allow them to do an accurate inventory, and if we need more than that, come back for another motion?
I was gonna say, why don't we do an inventory and get prices and come back next meeting? We don't have any that we need in the next 30 days. And then then we'll know what we're looking at,
We need,
and
between
hopefully we
now
can
and
do
30
more.
days, Chris. There's 2 out on High Street.
Right,
I've had residents complain. You got 1 on Rachel and Lincoln. No street sign, but street lights going out. That's 3. I think Mike's got problems with the street light somewhere up here, unless it did fix
Well,
itself.
I don't.
My
we have no
inform was out
spares.
for us tonight.
I don't know that we need, action in, $6,000 or $7,000 of expenditure.
No.
To replace the ones that need to be replaced, but to upgrade existing ones that are working properly, why don't we do an inventory on that
Fine.
and get to that? If Mike needs to spend a couple dollars to
yeah, we don't need
replace-
council action
Right,
for
that's what I'm saying.
replacing lights that are out.
It's,
Yeah.
the challenge, I'm sorry.
There again, Craig, the lights you take off Market Street can be used other places in the borough because they're all the same.
Right.
If you got some good ones yet, they can still be used except for some of them.
And if we have a plan that says, hey, we wanna buy 40, we may be able to get some special pricing buying in quantity.
Mhm.
So Mike doesn't have any of the old style to put up on High Street, or we only wanna? Okay.
No.
The last one we had was put up on the street of Hold out here on Market
I
Street.
mean, to me, the lights that are just out, that aren't functioning, that's a maintenance issue. The ones that we're going to upgrade from something that's working, that's capital improvement. I think they're 2 separate matters. Nonetheless, we have a motion by Mr. Kirkhoff, second by Mr. Croftarmel to finish Market Street and buy 2 for High Street. That was the motion. Any further discussion?
Where is the appropriate place for that money to come from if we were gonna do it?
General fund.
It's either the general fund or highway aid.
Okay. And it's not budgeted to come out of the general fund currently?
I don't know. I'd have to,
I don't remember seeing it there, but.
I mean, it could be, under highway supplies. I mean, if it's a replacement, lights, that could be charged to highway supplies, but I don't think there's that much of a budget to
We
sustain.
didn't have any discussion of that in the budget preparation, but let us look at we'll look at the budget and figure out where.
I'll withdraw the motion for now, and we'll come back to it after we get an accurate count.
But in the interim, in the next 30 days, the ones that are
The
there.
ones that
not
are out are gonna be
functioning,
replaced.
can be taken care of. Okay. Everyone comfortable with that? Very good. Anything else, Mr. Kirkhoff?
I have nothing else.
Anything for Mr. Kirkall? Move on to revitalization development, Mr. Adams.
Just got one thing I would like to talk about. This month, I got an email from Chris about this program that Home Depot is doing. It's called Fresh Paint Days. And they basically give you a bunch of paint, $50 gift card to get paint supplies, and all you need is something to paint. So,
We do the floor.
well, there are some restrictions. It has to be exterior, it has to be a tax exempt building, like I can't paint anyone's house, so that's off the table. I went around town and looked at a bunch of different locations, and we talked about some in the committee meeting this month. And like at first I looked at the Sledworks Tower, but I didn't want a bunch of volunteers hanging off the tower trying to paint it, so that went off. I looked at the Doyle, since that's kind of like one of our major landmarks, but the problem with the Doyle would be the paint. There's more that needs done to the Doyle before paint can be applied.
And that's also would be tax exempt.
That's not tax
Yeah,
exempt.
I thought it was
I can
tax-
argue it.
I thought it was tax exempt organizations could apply, that you could use it on any building.
Since grant is available to any tax exempt group within the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania.
Right.
Yeah.
So the group is the tax exempt part. You can do any
Yeah,
building.
that's what it was.
Does the fire station need any paint work?
Well, that was my,
Does the firehouse have any, I mean, it's supposed to be brick, but is there any need for paint at the firehouse outside?
Maybe a couple
I know you're
windows.
not allowed to talk to the fire company.
I looked at the fire department.
Some of the windows, maybe, that's about it.
Well, I went down there and looked, and I was hoping the chief would be here tonight so I could talk to him directly about it, but the fire department, the brick side looks fine, but then there's that other side to it. That could
Martin
definitely use,
The Martin Building windows.
yeah, a couple coats of paint there, but, so that's kind of what I settled on, you know, I looked at a lot of different places, and the fire station and our band shell are the two that I'm thinking about putting the application in for.
Does it have to be a building now?
It does.
It has to be a building.
Yeah.
Say, what about the old bridge downtown there? at the
See, I
firehouse?
thought about like a bridge or something like that too, but they say it has to be
It has to be a building.
one building, you know, it can't be like a, cause I even looked at the, what was it, the DFW or the Legion, the gun that's in out, right? You know, something like that.
Legion.
It's in Penn Township, but.
Oh, I didn't know that was Penn
That's
Township.
close.
Okay. So, the one thing that concerned me about the fire station, was that if the amount of paint would be enough. So a gallon of paint covers 350 square feet, so that would mean I got 7,000 square feet to work with a max allotment of 20 gallons, which I think, after looking at the building, would be plenty. So what I'd like to make a motion to do tonight is to go ahead and fill out the application for the grant for the fire station and the band shell at, what's that, Cooper, what is it, official name?
Duncannon area park.
Okay, Duncannon.
Duncannon area.
Now, we will only get approval for one, but I can submit multiple applications, so that is my motion.
Second.
I have a motion by Mr. Adams, second by Ms. Young, to apply through the Home Depot Fresh Paint Program for grant funds to purchase paint and supplies for the Duncannon Fire Company station and the band shell at Cooper Field / Duncannon Area Park. Any further discussion?
You call it like a band shell and community building, because that's what it's used for.
Yeah.
Add a
Now-
little bit more to it.
Just so I'm clear, I will be selling these in a way to try and get us to win, because there's only 8 grants that will be awarded. So I will be upselling this a little bit, and, you know, trying to actually, you know, win the grant.
You got some salespeople in your committee, I'm sure.
Yeah, I'm quite the salesman myself, so.
Any further discussion? All those in favor, please consent by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.
That's all I have for this month.
Anything for Mr. Adams to say? Move on to unfinished business. Any unfinished business? Any new business? We have a second public comment session, and I believe there was somebody that wanted to speak.
Donna.
Tom?
My name is Tom Berenstein, I live at 9 Broadway. My son's gonna take this poster around to show you. This is sitting back here. Inboard. I am here to discuss the possibility of keeping chickens in your backyard. And you can take it around and see what we have in our backyard. I'm gonna go over some of the pluses first, and I'll hit all the things that I know everybody seems to have a problem with. My son and I put this together ourselves. It was a nice little project. We only have 3 chickens. I then heard a lot of scuttlebutt about other things going on in the borough that I didn't realize were going on. So I'd like to propose it in a way that has some rules and regulations and go over some things. Backyard chickens are nothing new. It's been, done for years. In fact, during the Depression, it was encouraged. Then it kind of got out of the way when everybody started buying eggs in grocery stores, things like that. I'm hoping that we could do this to go forward for the county and our little town anyway, because a lot of places have ordinances already. Harrisburg, York, a couple other ones, lots of them actually. I just didn't have enough time to look into all of them, but there's pretty much regulations. It's a green movement. They're more like pets than they really are chickens for us anyhow. For the eggs, for composting, fertilizer, insect control, and entertainment. And also there's no roosters needed for eggs. So that leads into the whole noise aspect of it. Pretty much no roosters. Most of the plans would say no roosters.
My life philosophy.
And, so I agree with that. You don't need roosters for eggs. These hens are very quiet. This is the first time I've ever had chickens myself, actually, and they go to bed better than children. Come like when the sun's going down, they go in their house and they go to bed. I shut the little door so they can't get back out, but it's pretty amazing. I mean, they're very quiet. Sleep through the night, no sound, nothing. As far as smell goes, any animal can smell. Most of the time people think of chickens, they think of commercial chicken houses. That's a lot of chickens, that's a lot of smell. I have 3 chickens, there's no smell. It all depends on how clean everything is, which I would propose that we have rules and regulations per that, not just like you can have chickens, but it has to be a certain number and stuff like that. Keep the coop clean. Commercial products are also sold that you can put on the ground to keep, smells at a minimum. And also keeping the ground dry is very important. Keep the smells away too. Disease aspect of this. Even during avian flu outbreak, the CDC in the U.S. felt there was no need to remove any flocks of chickens because of avian flu. Most of the few diseases that affect chickens also cause illness in humans. Most of the time the diseases are to the chickens because of poor care they're under and cleanliness. They need to be clean and free from mud, built up feces, wild birds and rodents to stay away from them. And one thing I didn't realize, which I got these chickens and I was like, why are they like in love when they throw dirt all over themselves and make a little bed in the dirt and everything? So I Googled this. They give themselves dirt baths so they keep the mites and everything off themselves and keep themselves clean. So that was kind of interesting to me. So if you have a good place for them, they're clean and free of disease. Pests. The coops need to be made so they're unable to be dug into. So they should have a base on them. There should be regulations for this as well. Food should be kept inside the coop. As you can see, our food is in the coop, not in the run. So nothing can get in the coop but the chickens. So there's no outside rodents, anything like that trying to get at your food. Food's stored in airtight containers, and it should be. And we keep the coop close to the house for that reason as well. Let's see, food storage I covered. Waste. Dispose of the waste, just like, essentially 3 chickens are not making any more poop than a dog or 2 dogs. So it's not that much, just dispose of it in the garbage can like you would double bag out for the regular trash, or compost or fertilizer or into the garden and flower beds. So the proposals and the ordinances, different things that I looked up, most of them were limit your chicken numbers, which to me, that makes common sense. I have a really tiny yard. I know some people that have chickens in the area that have a lot bigger yards, but I feel like in a town, in a little backyard, it should be limited. Some of the ordinances that I've found, they limited on your square footage of your yard. You wouldn't even necessarily need to do that. You could just make a straight rule that you're only allowed a certain amount, no matter how big or small your yard is. No roosters, obviously. No breeding them. No selling them. no using them for, slaughter or anything like that, strictly for pets and the eggs. I also would like a borough fee to be attached to it, because then that would keep the people that do want the chickens to actually have to delve into this and be responsible about it. Have to pay the borough fee, yearly even, to have the chickens. That would be some revenue there too. Spot inspections at any time. Be written up certain distance from properties, from your other properties. That would be all in an ordinance. Size of the coop would be in the ordinance, along with the number of chickens in the ordinance. This small coop we bought, I think it said we could have 7 chickens in there, which seems ridiculous for that size.
I don't want to interrupt you, but your time has elapsed.
Oh, okay, all right.
Anything you want to say to wrap things up?
No, that if it would be allowed, I would be willing to work on the ordinance.
I would, when is your meeting?
I was just gonna say, that's,
Well,
like,
July 11th.
yeah,
Yeah.
my meetings are always the second Tuesday of the month at 6:30. And I'm gonna kind of take the lead on this, to go ahead.
Mr. Adams is the chair of our Development and Revitalization Committee.
Okay.
And in our legal personnel committee meeting prior to the meeting this evening, we discussed this very briefly, and he said it's something that certainly falls under that realm.
Okay.
And he'd be happy for his committee to take it on. I think you came in after the meeting had begun. We had some discussion earlier that was very much along the same lines. In support, we actually received a petition tonight with a lot of names and a lot of comments in support of having, chickens. Well, the response that we provided was that at present, the way the ordinance is written, you're breaking the law, frankly. However,
Yeah, I didn't even know, I just went to
I-
a neighbor, I was like, oh, they got chickens up there, I checked it out.
I think in most cases,
That's what we
that's
did.
probably the case.
Yeah.
And I'm not trying to,
No,
say
yeah,
you're
yeah.
criminal.
I get it.
But at the same time, we instructed our codes enforcement officer last month to follow the ordinance as it's published, because that's what we're bound with. If it's our desire to change that, and I think that we're going to look at some recommendations from the committee, I threw out the idea of putting it as a referendum on the ballot in November, and see what the public thinks. That may be an option as well, and it would require a process to change.
Oh, so this is gonna have to be voted on by the community?
We're not saying
just
that. We're not
here?
saying that. That may be an option. That's a tool that we could use.
Okay.
But I think, having an opportunity for people, with changing the ordinance, we would have a public comment period to get some input. But we have some restrictions both in our zoning ordinance and in our regular, ordinance book that would have to be, rewritten and aligned. And that process takes some time. So it's on the radar, and I don't think it's going to go away quickly. I know Mr. Bissonette doesn't go away quickly. So we'll
How do you know who that is?
Kevin Bissonette's one of your allies,
Okay.
I believe.
Where does he live?
He's on High Street.
Fellow chicken lover.
Oh, are you the one I talked to your wife? Oh, okay, yeah.
So
Okay.
it's on our radar, and
Okay.
we've referred it to the committee to review their meetings on the 11th of July. We would encourage you and anyone that's in favor.
So when is this again? We need to come back, or?
It's a committee meeting.
Committee, yeah.
The committee's going to review and make a recommendation back to council on July 11th is their meeting
Okay.
at 6:30.
The same thing I kind of said to Kevin earlier, there's not like an overwhelming community response against this, it's just we have an ordinance that says.
Yeah, no, from the research and things, it's not like putting an ordinance that's gonna make everybody go, I want some chickens in my backyard. It's probably not gonna do that anyway.
I don't really see any
It's just
kind of.
making us be in,
Right, yeah, I
the
don't
law
see any
with you.
serious kickback from the community that's gonna be against it, but I
Okay.
just have to follow, what I'm allowed to do in order to change it.
okay.
The biggest concern initially was just them being loose,
Yeah, no.
free range or whatever you
Yeah,
call it.
actually, you can move your coop around, which if you want free-range chickens, you just move them, they're called wagons. And, yeah, just move them from wherever, if you have a big yard, you can do it that way, but whatever. Okay,
We appreciate
All right.
the input, the participation, and
Please come to the
you're on the
meeting.
radar.
I'll see, it's hard after work.
I know.
Okay, all right, thanks.
Thank you. Mr. Bissonette, you get 3 more minutes.
All right. Oh, this shouldn't take too long either. Earlier on in the meeting, it was mentioned about the one sign down on the square about possibly just not enforcing that ordinance until it was reviewed. Is that something that could be considered here with the chickens for the folks that currently have them? Whereas they're in a holding period, if you will, until the recommendation comes back to council on this. As opposed to making people get rid of their chickens this week and then potentially next month there be action taken that would have made that a moot point.
The difference is the zoning permit application has been submitted, it just has not yet been finalized, the review of that permit application. So, you know, if you'd like to submit a zoning permit application for the chickens, I won't rule on that until the zoning law issue is settled. You know, but the borough ordinance is what Tony is enforcing, and that's a law separate from the zoning. It's very different.
They're pretty different situations, I think. And I think the council could very well say, if they want to make a motion that we will withhold enforcement, I don't know if that's appropriate. But I think
Is it, Bill? No.
Probably not.
Okay.
Prosecutorial discretion.
The only issue that
So
we
that would
had,
be up
we
to
did
your
talk about doing that in the
prosecutor,
meeting
your
before this,
codes
the
guy.
committee meeting. What we were concerned about is if, say we say, okay, people who have it, it's fine, but that means that nobody else can get them in between now. Well, that creates friction between, well, why can they have them and why can't we have them? We're worried about the conflict that would create.
And that's something that even, you know, some people I've spoken to about this said they would understand that type of situation. Unfortunately, there's, you know, no one here to back that at this point,
Right.
but,
I've gotten the tone from multiple conversations, it's something that was discussed with previous councils, and previous councils said that it wasn't an issue for them.
yeah, and that's,
I don't know
mean,
if they're here to say that or not.
I can personally say, I know for a fact that the chickens were brought up by the old council, and I know 3 of you were on council. I would go back through your minutes. They were told that they directed the police to investigate the chickens.
which if you look back at the 2000,
Yes, that's who we had at
2015,
the time.
that did in fact occur.
Instead of
It
At
was
that
brought
end, I
back.
don't know, I just
It
know
was
that
brought back
direction
to the
was
borough
coming
manager
from.
at the time and codes at the time, and we're back at square one of where the whole discussion started.
To me, the difference is very simple between the zoning permit application and the situation with chickens, and that is, you've already broken the law. The zoning permit application, that person is following the process of the law to get permission for their sign,
Which is already up though, is my point.
and they're following the law. They've made their zoning permit application, and if their ruling is that their sign is not permissible, they'll have to take it down.
And that's that's all I was asking for here was the same, I understand it's 2 separate sections,
But
but it's the
there's,
same thing.
there's already a ruling on your situation. The law is very clear on that, and, you know, there is a process whereby the people with the sign can go through a process to apply, following the law, for an exception to the law or for a variance to allow them to have a sign that does not meet the code for the zoning. You can avail yourself to that same process if you are found to be in violation by the zoning officer, which is myself. I have not sent you a zoning notice. Your only notice right now is from the codes enforcement officer.
Correct.
But quite frankly, you're in violation of the zoning as well, and that notice will be forthcoming. You can then avail yourself to the zoning hearing board to ask them to give you permission to have an exception to the zoning and allow something that the zoning otherwise does not allow. That is the legal process that's in place for you to follow if you want to do that prior to waiting for council to give this consideration and make a decision.
Was the sign put up on that business prior to their application being submitted?
It doesn't matter.
Actually, yes, it does in this point.
It doesn't matter.
Because it would be the same situation then that I
They are
have.
they are in compliance with the law at this point.
Is the problem that it's just all about the law and not that we're ever gonna change it? Or is it the problem that the
It's not
chickens
up,
are a
it's
problem?
not up to me
That's
to
just
change
what
it
I'm
or to
wondering.
not change it. That's up to your elected officials. And they're going to they've said they've committed to undertaking a process to evaluate it and see if they feel it should be changed.
So can I keep my
But it
chickens
just didn't
for
sound
a
very
month
positive to
until
me
we
sitting
can at
back
least
here.
start the process, is all we're asking.
Before this gets out of control, I want one person at a time to talk. Mrs. Berenstein, do you have anything else?
No, it just didn't sound very positive, that's why I asked that question. It kinda sounded cut and dry, this is the law and that's it, didn't sound
At this moment, that's.
No,
that is-
he's talking about a
Well,
sign
you're talking
issue.
about two different things. He's talking about a sign that's up in the square in comparison to the chickens. So there's two different things being talked about.
earlier in the meeting before you got here, Chris is gonna take it to his committee, and for discussion, it's July 11th, it's a public meeting, to discuss whether the ordinance can be changed, or will it be changed or not, based on what council decides, and they'll bring it to council. The sign is a completely separate issue than the two.
But I think what she's asking is it going to be changed or not?
We don't
And at
know.
this point, we don't know what's gonna come out of committee.
To Chris,
Come to these meetings.
If it's going to be changed, it will take several months.
Is it a waste of my time to come on the 11th?
No,
Okay, okay.
Definitely not.
His job is
Okay.
to enforce, their job, those
Yeah.
two, is to enforce what is on the
Yeah.
books now, and that's what
Yeah.
they're saying and what they're
I
doing.
just don't wanna come up here to whole,
No,
like,
if-
waste my time, and that
the
everybody
biggest
pretty much already
reason-
hates it anyway.
The biggest reason I need you to come to that is so I can get the information to present to the rest of council a proposed change to the ordinance. You know, I don't have an opinion either way, it's up, you know, whatever.
July's meeting, it's probably not gonna be determined in July, that the ordinance is going, this is gonna be this is gonna take a
In
few
the meantime,
months.
am I paying fines and things, or what?
It can get to that point.
We were
Okay, so
If you haven't- if you haven't been cited
what am I
yet,
gonna
no.
get sent to me? What's gonna happen here from now
Have
until
you
July?
been cited yet?
No.
But he just said that.
Have you been cited yet?
Only by.
Have you been cited?
Yeah.
Fine.
No.
No. Thank you.
Oh, I thought they were.
It's
I
in,
thought other
it's
people
in
were,
the hands
that's
of the
why.
codes enforcement.
You were
officer
given a
how
notice
swiftly
that
will move.
you're in violation.
That's all.
He has
it is.
not
She hasn't
fined
gotten it.
anyone yet. Okay, you haven't gotten one
Okay,
yet,
that's
so
fine,
you're
that's all I'm
good.
asking. Am I gonna go home tomorrow and find something?
No.
Okay.
No.
If you heard the comment earlier, and, you know, there's some innuendo perhaps here, but if you heard the comment from our solicitor, or, you know, we shouldn't, and I agree, just say we're not gonna enforce the code anymore. Because it's adopted, it's duly advertised, it had public comment, everything else, it's in place and believed to be legal.
Yeah.
Another difference with the zoning issue on the signs is there's some legality question on that. So that makes that a very different issue altogether, because I think we have some questions about the legality of that ordinance. We don't have any questions about the legality of the chicken ordinance. We have questions about whether the public wants it, and that's why we're gonna start to review it. Moving forward with that, you know, the process to change that, if that's the wish of everybody, takes some time, but it can happen. In the interim, there's prosecutorial discretion.
Sometimes when the cop pulls you over, he gives you a ticket. Sometimes he gives you a warning.
So I don't want to put any pressure on the guy sitting behind you, but our code enforcement officer is a very rational and reasonable man.
But I'm kinda like with Tim, do I wanna get rid of them and then 2 months later
I
find
want.
out?
I want.
Okay, that's all I'm saying.
what we
'Cause they're
want to
not-
know.
Yeah, you know.
It's gonna be up in the air, I don't have to go home.
If I were in your position, just
Until we go
personally,
through the
I would wait to
process.
see if he cites you.
He's not gonna say. I'm like,
Samantha,
I mean, I just, you know.
Samantha, did you have something?
No, that's all I wanted.
What was that?
She didn't want to get rid of
I
the
didn't want to
bird.
have to get rid of my birds waiting to start the process and go through the whole process.
What I can tell
Because if
you,
an ordinance passes, then my birds are fine. If the ordinance doesn't, then I'll deal with it.
You can just keep moving around for us.
That's actually what, there are people that do that in the city. They call themselves a chicken underground and they move their birds around.
Chris, did you have something you wanted to add?
just that, you know, in all codes matters, all zoning matters, we always work for compliance, not for punishment. You know, we work to help people get in compliance with the laws and not, I think Tony can tell you, other than parking tickets that weren't paid, where'd he go?
He's walking back room.
I think you'll find that, you know, over the course of the past year, he's probably issued less than 10 citations for code violations. You know, most of the citations that are issued are for parking ticket violations. You know, he'll work with people to help them to get into compliance. That doesn't always happen firmly within his whatever deadlines in the notice that you get. Sometimes he has to grant extensions while he's working with people to help them come into compliance. So, you know, in each case, you know, he deals with on an individual basis. You know, simple things like how cooperative people are, you know, just like anything in law enforcement. So, you know, until you get a citation, as opposed to a notice, you're not under any threat of a fine. The notice is like a warning telling you you're not in compliance with the law. If you don't come into compliance within the period that Tony decides, then he goes the next step and files a citation. So,
It is code, I'm not gonna need to expect a letter from you, I'm still just dealing with him.
I'm going to send everybody I know that has chickens a notice of violation. I am not going to proceed to the next step until after those notices of violation go out and we work with people on their efforts to come into compliance.
Okay.
However long that might take, you know, if we can help that happen, make that happen. I can't sit here and tell you that we're not going to enforce the law, because that would be just flat out wrong for me to say we're not going to enforce the law. We can't make any promises like that. You've been very cooperative. I didn't even know she had the chickens. You know, she just came in and confessed her crime. You know, I'm gonna let her go down to the pub and
You
get
have a
some
right to
holy
remain
water
silent.
tonight and worry about it later. You know, that'll be her penance. But no, seriously, we will work with people on compliance, and council will work through the issue and make their decisions on how they want to proceed.
Is there any other public comment? I think we know chickens are on the agenda.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Kirkhoff, a second by Ms. Young. Next regular meeting will be Tuesday, July 18th, beginning at 7 o'clock. We hope to see everybody back.
Tony,
All those in favor?
get her address.
Aye.